Every silence hides a scream, and every shadow hides a truth. Tell me, at what time and from where are you listening right now? Comment below, and don't forget to subscribe, because the darkness has only just begun. The last breath before the silence. The rain arrived like a confession nobody wanted to make, soft at first, then relentless, rinsing the city until even the streetlights seemed to float. Ravenport had heard storms sing before, but that night the downpour learned a new song. The thin, fragile sound a human breath makes when it knows it's the last one before silence. By the time Detective Evelyn Carter reached the alley behind Waverly Street, the water had already turned the asphalt into a dark mirror. Sirens pulsed somewhere behind her, smearing blue and red across the puddles. She paused 2 paces in, took in the smell, wet brick, old oil, something metallic beneath it, and followed the officer's gloved handlight to the shape curled by the dumpster. The girl's skin didn't look dead. It looked written on, black, as if ink had seeped through pores and pooled at the wrists, the throat, the soft temple where rain gathered and beaded. The puddle around her reflected a face that had tried to bargain with the night and lost. Her hair clung to her cheeks. A single paper moth lay on her chest, folded precisely, the kind of origami you get from patient hands and a steady eye. The rain had teased its wings apart until they trembled. Evelyn crouched. She didn't touch the body, not yet. She let her eyes do the touching, the blackened pressure points, the faint rash of pinpricks along the hairline, the bluish tint that wasn't quite cyanosis. Something performed here, she thought, and not with heat or blade. The killer had wanted a signature anyone could see, yet no one would understand. Mid-20s, said Detective Marcus Hale, stepping in behind her, umbrella tilted off his shoulder as if umbrellas were an insult to detectives. He was square-jawed and exhausted in a way that never fully slept, a man who kept all his promises even when he shouldn't. No ID on her. Purse is dry, which means it wasn't here when it rained. We're in a rainstorm, Evelyn said quietly. Everything is wet except the thing that matters. She angled her chin at the paper moth. It looked delicate, but there was something defiant in it too. Bag at last, Marcus nodded, signaled to the techs. Beyond the tape, a cluster of faces hovered, curiosity bearing umbrellas. Someone held up a phone. The city had the same hunger at every scene. Name it, tag it, make it yours. A van door slammed and Dr. Lila Monroe slid in under a hooded coat, a practical specter with a stainless steel case. Forensic pathologist, steady as the tide. Evening, she said. Rain marched across the hood and snuck into her collar anyway. Our Jane Doe makes a statement without saying a word. Evelyn stood to give Lila the narrow space. The black? Superficial, not ink, at least not the kind that stays where you put it. I'll confirm, but I'm betting on a reaction. Look here. Lila's gloved finger hovered. Wrists, neck, temples, vascular neighborhoods. Almost like someone mapped meridian points on a human and decided to color the roots. Tattoo? Marcus asked, and too fast for ink, too deliberate for rot. Smell anything? Evelyn inhaled again. The metallic note rose, then sank under rain. Like a wet coin. Coppery. Could be a trace byproduct. Lila leaned closer. See these faint stipples around the hairline? That's not natural. Something was applied. We'll know more on the table. A uniform jogged up with a plastic bag. This was under the recycling bin, Detective. Inside, a slim card gleamed, waterproofed. The gold foil letters read, Halo Casting, a phone number, a handwritten first name on the back in quick showy loops, Camille. Found our name, Marcus said. Maybe. Evelyn slid the bag into her coat pocket. Or someone else's mistake. He squinted toward the tape, where a man in a dark raincoat seemed to be narrating into a tiny mic, camera operator hovering nearby under a tarp. You've got to be kidding me. It was only a matter of time, Evelyn said. The man tipped 2 fingers from his brow as if reading her thought. Jake Rowan, true crime podcaster, hungry, quick with an angle. If a storm landed, he knew how to bottle it. Tonight, the bottle was a live stream, and the caption would be something like Rain Street Riddle or Ravenport's Black Ink. He knew the value of a name. He'd give this killer one, whether it fit or not. Don't look at him, Evelyn said. Wasn't planning to, Marcus lied. Lila closed her case. I'll need the scene within 20. We'll umbrella the transfer. From the pattern, I'd wager contact of one agent and activation by another, primer and trigger. You'd be amazed how many things the rain can wake up if you whisper the right chemistry. Primer, Evelyn repeated, tasting the word. So she was marked before she was killed. Likely. Or at least before the final cascade. Lila gestured to the moth. And that's not a coincidence. Nothing here is, Evelyn said. They waited while the photographer did his ritual. No angles, no art, just documenting where the lies had slept. Evelyn let the city speak to her. Gutters gurgling, a bottle rolling against curb, distant thunder cleaning its throat. The rain thinned for a breath, just long enough to make her think it would stop, then returned harder, as if offended by hope. Detective Carter. The voice came from the mouth of the alley where Chief Darnell Briggs had appeared under a nylon canopy, a dark suit that didn't look made for water. He didn't step in. He didn't need to. Authority travels in dry shoes. We're going to keep the lid tight on this one. Understood, Evelyn said. No names to press until we confirm ID and family, and Carter, Judge Amelia Cross, already called. She wants assurance we won't spook any donors. The dead girl doesn't look like a donor, Marcus muttered. Briggs pretended the rain took that line. Do your job, I'll do mine. And keep Rowan out of your mouth unless you want to taste lawsuits. Evelyn's mouth twitched. If Rowan can taste the rain, he'll say it has a name. He already did, Marcus said under his breath. He just tweeted Ink Phantom with a moth emoji. Briggs stared a beat longer than comfortable and vanished into the curtain of water with his umbrella. Rain filled the space he left as if the alley had never contained a man. The stretcher arrived. The girl lifted into the shroud of plastic and white, her last address erased from the scene. The paper moth went into its own bag as Evelyn had asked, a strange respect for a killer's origami. The tech who sealed it shivered. Feels like we're giving the rain a secret to keep, Marcus pointed toward the dumpster. There's a smear here, black on black, but if you angle... Evelyn leaned, watching the way the puddle bent the light. The smear wasn't a smear at all. It was a print, a partial wing shape, the kind you get when paper darkens and sticks and gets peeled away too fast. A moth had clung there before it changed address to the girl's chest. It left behind no ink, just the idea of ink. Patterning, she said. They're staging it. They. He liked to catch her on pronouns. It was a game that made them both feel like they were deciding the world. For now, she said, let's not decide alone. Back at the car. Evelyn sat with the door half open, rain stitching a line between street and seat. She opened the halo casting bag and flipped the card. Camille. If that was the girl's name, it would make the paperwork easier and the funeral harder. She took out her phone and dialed dispatch. Check missing persons for a Camille in the last 48 hours, female 20 to 30. Cross-reference stage names and agencies connected to Halo casting. Copy, came the crackle. Marcus leaned on the frame. You think the card was dropped or planted? Both feel convenient, she said. But people are convenience when they're scared. They carry what they think will open doors. Casting is a door. He glanced at the alley. Or a trap. Evelyn didn't answer. Her mind had trapped the image of the blackened points on the girl's skin and wouldn't let it go. Wrists, neck, temples. If death was writing, what was the sentence trying to say? On her screen, a message from an unknown number arrived with a thumbnail of her own face caught mid-step in the rain. She opened it. A link. If you want the truth faster, detective, listen live. The icon under it was Jake Rowan's podcast feed. He's taunting us now, Marcus said. He used to wait until morning. Storms make everyone impatient. She didn't tap it. She could hear Jake anyway. He had the kind of voice that could make a grocery list feel like a confession. He'd be telling his listeners there was a pattern, that Ravenport was waking up to a hunter with a taste for spectacle, that the police would talk about ongoing and sensitive while bodies continued to darken under rain. He'd float a name for the killer and test it like a weather balloon. He'd sell umbrellas with his logo by the weekend. Camille, Marcus said again as if the name could anchor them. If it's her. If it's her, Evelyn agreed. They rode the wet street toward the morgue as the city blurred into a watercolor of neon and shadow. In the glass awning of a closed florist, she caught her reflection for a second. Dark hair, darker eyes, rain turning her into a rumor. A memory rose without permission. The smell of iodine and storm water from a triage tent years ago when a flood had taught her that not every hand you reach for wants saving. She shoved it back down where she kept all the other things she didn't say. Ravenport County Medical Examiner. White letters on wet brick, the kind that never seemed to dry. Inside, the air was bright and cold enough to erase the idea of rain. Lila was already there, gloved and masked, the body labeled Jane Doe 2025-06-2701. She nodded them in. Prelim only, she said. I won't rush the full. Give us the shape, Evelyn said. Lila spoke in careful rhythm, the way she always did when the living needed facts and the dead could afford patience. No defensive wounds, no blunt force. The blacking is not ink. Under UV, there's a faint luminescence along certain pathways, like a residue carried by sweat, then activated later. There's mild airway irritation consistent with aerosol exposure. I shaved a tiny sample at the temple. Under the discoloration, the skin is normal, which means the color isn't invasion, it's reaction. A contact primer and a later trigger, Evelyn said. That's my working, Lila said. Rain is our suspect as much as any person. Rain as courier. Rain as accomplice. Time of death? 2 to 4 hours ago. The rain started at 9. She was gone before midnight. Lila paused. There's an injection mark in the upper arm, very small. Cosmetic, medical, unknown. Tox will tell us more. Identity? Marcus asked. No fingerprints in any DB yet, Lila said. Dental will take time, but there's a healed scar under her chin, submental lipo. A small implant at the jaw hinge, the kind of work people do when a camera starts being honest. Evelyn didn't flinch. She wanted to be seen. Or she was told to be, Lila replied. A knock at the door. A tech poked in with a zip bag. From the locker. This was in her coat lining. He handed it to Evelyn. Inside, a sticky note, rain-blurred but legible enough. A time, an address, and 3 letters scrawled in dull pencil. PGW. Marcus tilted his head. PGW? Could be Pure Glow Wellness, Lila said. They run a quiet clinic downtown. I've seen their brochures in waiting rooms. All smiles and steam. Evelyn looked at the letters long enough to give them weight, then slid the bag into her pocket beside the halo card. A casting office and a wellness clinic. 2 doors. Sometimes murder wore a doorman's grin. She found a corner of the corridor and called dispatch again. Confirm whether Pure Glow Wellness runs any permitted facilities within 5 miles of Harbor Quarter. If there's a quiet one, I want it loud. And halo casting? Marcus asked when she hung up. Tomorrow, she said. Tonight we learn what the rain woke up. Already got a hint, he said, showing her his phone. He'd finally tapped Rowan's live stream. Jake's voice curled out, slick and intimate. In a city that sells beauty by the ounce, a killer paints with water. The ink phantom chose a canvas tonight, and the police are calling it sensitive. Sensitive is a word for a bruise you don't want touched. Evelyn took the phone and killed the sound. He thinks he's part of the story. He is, Marcus said. He names the monsters. Monsters name themselves, she said. They left Lila to her work. The rain was back to its heavier verse, thumping on the awning, insisting. Outside, a woman in a hood stood by the curb, smoking in the downpour like she didn't owe the weather any respect. She watched Evelyn with a patient, unthreatening interest, then flicked the cigarette into a puddle and walked away. "Friend of yours?" Marcus asked. "No," Evelyn said, but a small chill threaded her spine. The woman's face had been pale in a way the night tries to erase. Eyes shadowed, a droplet clinging to the tip of one eyelash until it fell. The cigarette hissed out and left a faint oil bloom on water. It looked absurdly like a tiny moth opening and closing its wings. Back in the car, Evelyn finally allowed herself a hypothesis. The first she'd fold and tuck away until the evidence either fed it or starved it. Someone had found a way to mark people with a promise and let the weather keep it. The city's oldest habit, rain, turned into a trigger. If the killer was choosing victims linked by something other than convenience, she needed to know the logic. Vanity? Exploitation? Punishment? The presence of Halo and Pure Glow in the same night felt less like coincidence and more like a rumor becoming a map. Her phone buzzed again. Dispatch. 2 possible Camille's missing in 48 hours. 1, Camille Hart, 24, actress, last seen at Halo casting 5 p.m. The other, Camille Wren, 27, yoga instructor, last seen leaving Pure Glow Wellness at 8 p.m. Marcus read over her shoulder. 2 doors, he said. Same initials on your note, same business card in your pocket. Or 1 person with 2 lives, Evelyn said. But I don't like fairy tales. They turned the car toward Harbor Quarter, where the glass facades of wellness clinics reflected the storm like they'd invented it. Even closed, the lobbies glowed with those fake calm blues meant to tell you your face would be forgiven. Evelyn counted the buildings like teeth and felt the city bite back. In the hush between thunder and the next downpour, a thought surfaced. Simple, stubborn, inescapable. If the rain could be taught to finish a killer's sentence, it could be taught to stutter. Somewhere in the science there would be a counteragent. Somewhere in the motive there would be a reason that wrapped around the necks and wrists and temples of people who'd believed good looks were safety rails. She did not see, could not yet see, the lighthouse or the warehouse or the rooftop gala the future would demand. She knew only this. A paper moth folded with care had fluttered across a dead girl's chest, and the city had learned a new word for fear. The last breath before the silence had already been taken. Now it was time to find out who had pressed the lips shut. The next morning came with no sunrise. Ravenport rarely offered them. Its skyline was a patchwork of damp steel, crooked spires and neon promises still buzzing from the night before. The rain had taken a brief intermission, but the city smelled like it was only catching its breath. Detective Evelyn Carter sipped a paper cup of coffee that had gone lukewarm too fast. She sat at her desk in the precinct, the walls around her plastered with the faces of yesterday's crimes. The week's unclaimed corpses, the year's failures that wouldn't sit still in her mind. The moth photo lay clipped on top of a file, a fragile, meaningless shape that had already started to mean everything. Camille Hart, said Marcus Hale, dropping a folder onto her desk. 24. Actress. At least she wanted to be. Halo Casting had her on their talent roster. She'd done a handful of commercial auditions. No confirmed roles. Evelyn flipped through the glossy headshots tucked inside. Camille stared out from them with the kind of smile people wear when they've been told smiling is half the job. The ink-black still photo from the morgue overlaying it felt like a cruel before and after. Who sold her the dream? Evelyn thought. Who convinced her the rain would make it real? There's a second Camille, Marcus continued. Camille Wren, yoga instructor. Last seen leaving Pure Glow Wellness the same night. Different circles, different lives. Same first name, same initials. 2 Camilles, 1 body. Evelyn set the file down. So which one is ours? Working on dental confirmation, Marcus said. But Hart's roommate filed the missing persons report. She hasn't been home in 2 days. Wren's family thought she was at a retreat. And Pure Glow? Stonewalling. They claim Wren left their clinic smiling, refreshed, full of vitality. One of those lines you pay PR people to write. Evelyn rubbed her temple. 2 Camilles, one with ambition, one with serenity. Both fed into the same machine. Marcus leaned back against the desk. You think they're connected? I think the killer wanted them connected. She tapped the moth. Origami doesn't happen by accident, neither does naming. Before Marcus could answer, the door to the bullpen banged open and Chief Briggs stormed in with his umbrella still dripping. Carter! Hale! My office! Now! They followed him into the glass cubicle where the blinds never fully closed, making privacy feel like theater. Briggs slapped a newspaper down. The headline screamed, Ink Phantom Strikes, Reign of Death. The byline? Transcript from Jake Rowan's live podcast. Your friend Rowan is 3 steps ahead of us, Briggs growled. The mayor wants a lid. Judge Cross is breathing fire. And I've got half the city convinced some phantom is painting corpses with storm water. I don't want to see the word phantom in any of your reports. Then we stop giving Rowan material, Evelyn said evenly. Or you start catching killers before he names them, Briggs shot back. Pure Glow's lawyers called this morning. They're hinting at harassment if we so much as breathe in their lobby. They're tied to the victims, Marcus said. They're tied to donors, Briggs corrected. And donors keep this precinct's lights on. You want to pursue a lead, you do it quiet. Off paper. If it leaks, it's your badge. He dismissed them with a wave that felt like a shove. Outside, Evelyn leaned on the railing. He wants us to stop the rain from falling. He wants us to stop people from noticing it's wet, Marcus said. So that evening, Evelyn drove alone to Harbor Quarter, where the neon signs of wellness spas bled into each other like oil slicks. Pure Glow Wellness stood at the end of the block, a building of mirrored glass that reflected a distorted city. Even closed, the lobby lights glowed cool blue, promising calm. She sat in the car and watched a cleaning crew mop marble floors inside, their motions robotic, their faces tired. The rain may wash the streets, she thought, but places like this never wash guilt. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered, already expecting the voice. Detective Carter, purred Jake Rowan. You're not as quick as your reputation, but I suppose rain doesn't fall on command. You're recording this. I'm always recording. For posterity. His chuckle was low, performative. Want to know what posterity hears tonight? That Camille Hart and Camille Wren both stepped into the same shadow. Different doors, same hall. You don't have evidence. I have whispers. And whispers, detective, make better stories than facts. People don't remember facts. They remember how they felt when they heard them. And right now they feel like rain can kill. Stop naming the killer. Why? He asked, mock innocence. The ink phantom already exists in the city's mouth. You can't kill a ghost once it's spoken. Evelyn's grip on the wheel tightened. One day, Rowan, I'll bring you in as an accessory. I'll podcast from the holding cell, he said smoothly. Good night, detective. Try not to drown. He hung up. Evelyn stared at her reflection in the rearview mirror. For a second, she imagined ink bleeding up her throat, blotting her reflection out. She blinked until it faded. The following morning, the storm returned with vengeance. Dispatch crackled at 6:13 a.m. another body. This time, a man in his early 30s found face down at the docks, skin marked in the same obsidian veins. Evelyn and Marcus arrived to see Ryan Cole, the swimmer with the impossible memory, leaning against the rail. He wore no umbrella, no hood, just the kind of body that looked like it belonged to water. His eyes tracked the rain as if it were speaking in lines only he could read. You shouldn't be here, Marcus snapped. I was, Ryan said softly. I saw him last night. He walked past me. His shirt was damp, but not from rain. There was something sprayed on him. I remember the way the light hit. It caught like film on glass. Evelyn narrowed her gaze. You remember everything? Ryan nodded. I swim every lane twice in my head before I dive. This city feels like that now. Last night there was a woman behind him, pale face. She touched his arm. When the rain hit, he fell. Name? Evelyn asked. I don't know her, but I'd know her if I saw her again. Marcus scoffed. Photographic swimmer boy, convenient. Evelyn silenced him with a look. Ryan, you saw the touch. Yes. And something fell from her sleeve, small, like folded paper. Another moth, another whisper. That night, Evelyn pinned the moth photo, the halo card, the pure glow note, and Ryan's sketch to the board. The strings between them weren't visible yet, but she could feel them in the rain. Each drop that struck the window carried weight, rhythm, code, and somewhere in that rhythm someone was orchestrating murder, and the rain, as always, was complicit. The morgue lights hummed like insects in a jar. Camille's body had been sealed away, but the second corpse lay on the table now, stripped of soaked clothing, skin glistening under cold fluorescence. The man had been handsome once, the kind of face printed on posters outside gyms and casting agencies. Now he looked like ink had seeped through from the inside, as if his veins had become calligraphy no one could read. Dr. Lila Monroe gestured Evelyn and Marcus closer. Her gloves were already streaked. Same discoloration, same vascular hotspots, but look here. She pressed a probe gently against the man's shoulder. The trigger sites are fresh, less than 3 hours ago. Rain started at 4, Marcus noted, checking his phone. Exactly, Lila said. Our killer doesn't work without a storm. The rain is part of the design. Evelyn folded her arms. So he, or she, primes the victim earlier, waits for the weather, then lets nature finish the job. Efficient and cruel, Lila said. But there's more. Trace residue on his sleeve, synthetic fibers dusted with a fine powder, some kind of cosmetic base, maybe theatrical, and she pointed to the neck. Tiny abrasion consistent with a hand gripping him before collapse. Marcus exhaled. So our swimmer wasn't lying. Ryan Cole saw her, Evelyn said, a pale woman. Lila peeled back the evidence bag on the table beside her. Inside was a crumpled piece of paper, ink blurred from water. Not a moth this time, but half a wing, torn as if the killer had been interrupted. Written across the fragment in faint pencil were 3 words. Purity is poison. The phrase landed in the room like another body. Statement, Marcus muttered. She's preaching. Or rehearsing, Evelyn said. Art student, maybe. Someone who sees death as installation. Lila nodded grimly. I'll run talks, but from the pattern I'd bet on a 2-stage polymer that interacts with moisture. Clever but unstable, that's why the black stains are irregular. Rain isn't consistent. Rain isn't consistent, Evelyn repeated. But the message is. When Evelyn returned to her apartment, dawn was already thinning. She peeled her coat off, tossed it across the chair, and collapsed onto the sofa. But sleep never came. The rain on the window kept talking. In its rhythm, she replayed the alley, the dock, the bodies, the moth, the phrase, "Purity is poison." Her phone vibrated. Another anonymous message, another link. Against her better judgment, she tapped it. Jake Rowan's voice filled the quiet. "This city sells beauty like candy, but the wrappers are poisoned. 2 Camille's, 1 truth. When you ask for purity, you invite death. The ink phantom understands. Do you?" Evelyn killed the feed and let the silence burn her ears. Jake was spreading the killer's words faster than she could contain them. And somewhere, someone was feeding him details only investigators should know. The precinct board grew crowded that afternoon. Photos of Camille Hart and Camille Wren side by side, strung with red lines to halo casting, Pure Glow Wellness, and the words, "Purity is poison," scrawled across the center. Beside it, Ryan's charcoal sketch. The pale woman's profile, shadowed eyes, moth-shaped pendant glinting faintly. Chief Briggs walked in, frowning at the chaos. "You're turning this place into an art gallery." "Better than a morgue," Evelyn shot back. He ignored her, pointed at Ryan's sketch. "What's this?" "Eyewitness composite," Marcus said. "From who?" "Ryan Cole, swimmer, photographic memory," Evelyn said. Briggs shook his head. "A civilian with a good story. You're betting this case on a fish." "His testimony matches forensics," Evelyn countered, "and he's the only one who's seen her." Briggs wasn't convinced, but he didn't order her to pull it down either. "Fine. But the mayor's on me. Judge Cross is on me. Naomi Voss is on me. If you don't bring me a suspect soon, I'll bring you a desk." He left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the moth photo. That night, rain returned. Dispatch rang Evelyn awake at 2:47 a.m. Another body, this time inside a luxury rooftop lounge. Someone had collapsed mid-party. By the time Evelyn arrived, the crowd was still buzzing, champagne glasses half empty, music still thumping. But the victim lay sprawled near the bar, eyes glassy, skin blooming black like bruises of ink. A young politician's son. High profile, the third in 2 days. The whispers rose instantly. Ink phantom. Panic swept the guests, but Evelyn noticed something subtle. This time, the ink pattern wasn't right. The stains were blotchy, uneven, almost sloppy. Marcus leaned close. "Copycat, or someone rushing," Evelyn said. She crouched, studying the corpse. No moth this time, just a cheap origami scrap tucked into his jacket pocket, wet and crude. The folds were messy. This wasn't the careful hand that had crafted the others. The killer had competition, or an imitator, and imitators complicate everything. Later, Evelyn sat in her car overlooking the drenched city. The windshield wipers kept beating back the storm, but the storm always returned. She scribbled in her notebook, "Camille Hart, halo casting. Camille Wren, Pure Glow Wellness. Male model, docs. Politician's son, rooftop, possible copycat. Messages, purity is poison. Evidence, moths, compound triggered by rain. Witness, Ryan Cole, pale woman, moth pendant." She closed the notebook, stared at the glass. Her reflection was fractured by raindrops. Somewhere in the distortion, she thought she saw another face looking back at her. Pale, patient, waiting. For the first time, Evelyn whispered aloud the name the city had already chosen. Ink Phantom. The words felt heavier spoken than thought. They tasted like rust. She spat them out and drove away into the rain that refused to end. The storm did not stop. It only shifted. By the third day, Ravenport's sky looked stitched together by thunderclouds, seams ready to split. Each clap of thunder echoed like a warning that the city refused to hear. In a place where rain fell like routine, it was easy to pretend this was nothing unusual. Easy until the bodies began to surface. Detective Evelyn Carter stood at the edge of Pier 17, her boots slick on soaked wood. The body lay half-submerged between barnacle-crusted pylons, swaying with the tide. A young man, late 20s, model perfect even in death. His once golden skin had darkened in unnatural maps. Wrists, temples, throat, the same cursed signature. Another moth pinned to the scene, not on the body this time, but snagged in the ropes that tethered the dock. Its wings sagged from water, but the folds were still meticulous. Dr. Lila Monroe crouched on the pier, her forensic kit open, rain dripping on the silver trays. "Identical patterning," she confirmed. "Look here, blackening of the pressure points. Discoloration mapping the vascular channels. Same as Camille." Evelyn nodded, already seeing the connections like lines on a board. "And the moth?" "Unchanged. Whoever folds these has practiced for years. Same crease memory. You could overlay each one and they'd match like a stamp." Marcus Hale muttered behind them. "Stamping death. Great." He flicked water from his coat. "That makes 3. Camille, the rooftop mess, and now this pretty boy. How many more before the city decides rain itself is guilty?" "It already has," Evelyn said. She glanced at the reporters corralled behind tape further up the dock. Flashes sparked through rain, cameras chasing tragedy. And among them, a familiar shape. Jake Rowan, his mic held low, speaking to a lens as if whispering directly into the city's ear. His eyes met hers across the crowd. He smiled. "Don't," Marcus warned. "I won't," she lied. Yeah, they transported the body back to the morgue. On the way, Evelyn scrolled through her phone, scanning every alert tied to the case. Social media had already adopted the hashtag Black Rain. Theories spread like weeds: toxic waste in the water, supernatural curses, occult cleansing sinners. People were terrified because the deaths seemed random. Random is worse than targeted. It makes everyone feel like a possible victim. When they reached the station, Evelyn pinned the new moth photo beside Camille's. Same fold, same craft. Her board grew crowded: halo casting, pure glow wellness, moths, the phrase purity is poison. And now, numbers scrawled faintly in the margin of the new moth, barely legible through the rain smears. Ryan Cole arrived just after dusk, his wet hair plastered back, his presence bringing with it the scent of chlorine and storm water. He looked uncomfortable in the precinct, like a fish forced to breathe air too long. But his eyes were steady. "You said you remember everything you see," Evelyn reminded him. "Every detail," Ryan answered. His voice was low, almost apologetic, but there was a strange certainty beneath it. "I replay nights like swims. Stroke by stroke, lap by lap. I can walk you through the dock as if it were still raining." "Do it," Evelyn said. Ryan closed his eyes, spoke slowly. He came down the pier at 10:07, checked his phone twice, shoes white, scuffed on the left sole. He leaned on the rail. A woman joined him, hood pulled low, skin pale, a moth pendant at her neck. She touched his arm. Not long, seconds. Enough to leave something. Then she stepped back into the dark. At 10:14, rain intensified. He gasped, collapsed. No one came to help. Evelyn stared at him. "You're sure of the time?" "I saw the clock tower through the rain. Hands on the 7 and 2. I don't forget numbers." Marcus frowned. "That's impossible detail." "It's what I do," Ryan said simply. "In the water, details matter. 1 second, 1 breath, and you drown." For a moment, the room fell quiet except for rain thrumming against the windows. Evelyn believed him. More than that, she wanted to believe because if his memory was true, then they had their first clear sighting of the phantom. Pale face, moth pendant, a woman. Later that night, Evelyn drove alone to Pure Glow Wellness, her wipers squeaking against sheets of rain. The clinic gleamed under blue light, its glass facade reflecting the storm like a shield. Inside, soft music played from hidden speakers, promising calm. But the receptionist's smile froze when Evelyn flashed her badge. "Closed session, detective," the woman said. Her name tag read Clarissa Yu. "Clients value privacy." "Your clients are dying," Evelyn said flatly. "Camille Wren, last seen here. Now she's a Jane Doe in our morgue." Clarissa stiffened. "We can't confirm that." "You won't," Evelyn corrected. "Show me her appointment log." Before the woman could answer, another door opened and Dr. Adrian Klein appeared. Tall, immaculately groomed, confidence oozing like cologne. "Detective Carter, I'd prefer you call before barging into my temple." "Pure Glow is a crime scene," Evelyn said. "Your patients are targets." Klein's smile never faltered. "My patients are patrons of beauty, and beauty, detective, always attracts envy. If someone is misusing my formulas, I am a victim too." "You admit your formulas could do this?" "I admit science is delicate," he said smoothly. "It can heal, it can harm. Depends on the hands that hold it. And some hands," his eyes glittered, "aren't worthy." Evelyn studied him, then glanced around the waiting room. Sleek brochures promised miracles in weeks. Glowing testimonials smiled from glossy pages. She picked one up. "Purity through perfection." The slogan hit like a blade. Purity is poison. The killer's words weren't random, they were stolen, twisted. She left with more questions than answers. Outside, the storm pounded harder. As she crossed the lot, her phone buzzed with a new message. A photo attachment. She opened it. A blurry image of herself leaving the clinic. Beneath it, text. "The rain remembers everything, do you?" At midnight, Evelyn returned to the precinct only to find chaos. Dispatchers were shouting, phones ringing. Marcus intercepted her at the door. "Another one," he said grimly. "This time, in public." They arrived at the rooftop lounge minutes later. Another body lay collapsed near the champagne bar. This time, not just a moth, but a crowd of onlookers whispering, filming, panicking. The victim, son of a state senator. Lila crouched over the body, frowning. "This one's different. The compound's uneven, almost sloppy." Evelyn studied the paper moth tucked into his pocket. Cheap folds, uneven wings. "Copycat," Marcus scowled. "Fantastic. One phantom wasn't enough?" "No," Evelyn said. "Now we've got more than one shadow moving in the rain." The rooftop crime scene did not end when the body was wheeled away. It lingered like a bruise across the city. The news cycle bloomed before dawn, every headline louder than the one before. "Senator's son slain in black rain murders." The media smelled blood, and now politics did too. By mid-morning, the precinct was suffocating under pressure. Chief Briggs slammed a stack of newspapers onto Evelyn's desk. "Do you see this? Do you? It's not a crime spree anymore. It's a goddamn circus, a politician's boy dead on camera, dozens of witnesses, and you're telling me the killer still vanished like fog?" Evelyn didn't flinch, because it wasn't the same killer. "What?" "This was a copycat," she said, pushing forward the evidence bag with the sloppily folded moth. "The pattern's wrong. The chemistry is off. Whoever killed him was imitating, not orchestrating." "Great. So we've got two psychos now. That makes the mayor feel so much better." Briggs rubbed his temple, his voice rising. Find me one name I can hand over to the press. Just one, Carter, before Judge Cross and Senator Howard turn this into my funeral." Marcus leaned against the board, arms crossed. "Name one, or hand them a scapegoat." "Don't get righteous with me," Briggs barked. "Do your damn job and keep that swimmer freak away from my station. We don't build cases on magic tricks." Evelyn bit down her retort. Briggs wanted results. Evelyn wanted the truth. The two rarely aligned. That evening, Evelyn sat in the observation room watching Ryan Cole through the one-way glass. He looked restless, knees bouncing, eyes fixed on nothing. She stepped in, closed the door softly. "Why are you still here, Ryan?" she asked. "Because you're chasing shadows," he said without turning. "And I see them clearer than you. Tell me about the doc again." He recited the memory detail by detail, the precision eerie. Then he added something new. The woman had a ring, silver. The band shaped like waves. It caught the lightning for a second. "You didn't mention that before." "I didn't notice it before," Ryan admitted. "Sometimes details surface later, like debris in water. They float up when the current shifts." Evelyn studied him. "You understand this city like a swimmer understands tide, but memories don't testify in court." "I'm not here for court," Ryan said quietly. "I'm here because people are drowning." For the first time, Evelyn saw the strain behind his eyes. He wasn't enjoying the attention. He was haunted. And that made him believable. The board grew heavier that night. Evelyn and Marcus worked late, piecing threads together. Halo casting, Pure Glow Wellness, Naomi Voss's charity dinners, Judge Cross's discreet investments. And now the senator's son. An outlier, or part of the same pattern. "We're missing the link," Evelyn said, rubbing her eyes. "Why Camille? Why the model? Why these people? They're all connected to industries that trade in appearance. But the senator's son?" Marcus tossed a photo on the desk. He was dating Naomi Voss's niece. Backstage connections. Evelyn froze. "So every victim ties back to the same circle." Marcus tapped the moth photo. "And every moth ties back to her." "Her," Evelyn echoed, eyes narrowing. Ryan's sketch of the pale woman with the pendant stared back at her from the board. The next morning brought another body. This one washed ashore beneath the iron skeleton of the old ferry dock. A waitress, young and plain, no agency contracts, no political ties. Her name was Sophie Lang. Evelyn crouched in the wet sand, raincoat clinging to her. The same blackening, the same staged tableau. But instead of a moth, a torn page of a leather-bound journal lay beside Sophie's hand. The words smeared but legible enough. "Purity is poison. They laughed at me, but they will choke on their laughter." It wasn't random, it was personal. Sophie had been chosen for a reason the killer wanted broadcast. "Looks like she wanted this one read," Marcus muttered. Evelyn bagged the journal fragment. "Not she," she corrected softly. "Not yet. Not until we prove it." The storm that evening was worse than any before. Sirens echoed through flooded streets. Evelyn sat in her car, wipers struggling, listening to the city suffocate underwater. On her passenger seat, Ryan's sketchbook lay open, the pale woman's face multiplying in charcoal. Each version more detailed, more real. He was chasing her in his memory, and through him, Evelyn was too. Her phone buzzed, another anonymous text, another photo. This time, Sophie Lang alive, leaving Pure Glow Wellness 2 nights ago. And beside her, blurred by motion, the outline of a pale woman, hood pulled low. The message read, "She chooses who deserves to drown." Evelyn closed her eyes. The rain hammered down. Somewhere in the city, the phantom was already choosing the next body. By the fourth day, Ravenport felt like it was drowning in fear more than rain. People no longer walked under umbrellas. They ran, sprinting between doorways as if the water itself had teeth. Bars emptied when clouds thickened. Joggers abandoned their routes. Even cab drivers hesitated at intersections as though the downpour might peel open the sky and drop another body at their wheels. Inside the precinct, the task force room was suffocating with chatter. Maps spread across the walls, red strings darting between photos. Camille Hart, Camille Wren, the model, the senator's son, Sophie Lang. At the center, the moths, now 3 perfect and 1 crooked. Evelyn's handwriting circled the phrase, "Purity is poison." She kept staring at it, waiting for the words to shift, to reveal something new. "Listen to this," Marcus said, holding up his phone. "Rowan's latest episode, he says, and I quote, 'The Phantom isn't just killing, she's curating. Each victim is a brushstroke in a portrait the city refuses to look at.'" "She," Evelyn repeated, catching the slip. Marcus shrugged. "He's guessing. He's also getting bolder." Evelyn paced. "Or he knows something. Every time we find a body, he's already spinning it. He's not just narrating this case, he's shaping it." "Then maybe he's closer to the killer than we think." Evelyn's phone vibrated before she could answer. Dispatch. Another call out. Her stomach sank at the words, "We've got 3 bodies this time." The scene was chaos. A flash flood had torn through the underpass near Tremont Street, swallowing cars and pedestrians alike. By the time first responders arrived, 3 people were already gone. 2 pulled lifeless from half-submerged vehicles, 1 dragged from a stairwell, her body blackened in familiar patches. But it wasn't the randomness of disaster. Each victim bore the ink blight marks. Each had been chosen. Lila stood soaked to the bone, her gloves trembling as she examined the bodies under the shelter of a tarp. "It's accelerating," she said grimly. "This isn't careful anymore, this is frenzy." Evelyn knelt beside the stairwell victim. Her face was oddly serene, as though she'd accepted something before the rain claimed her. Another paper moth lay crumpled against the step, wings smeared flat. Scrawled across it in red pencil was a number, 11-1. Marcus leaned over her shoulder. "Bible verse? Or a code?" Evelyn said. She bagged it carefully. "Find out." Ryan Cole appeared at her side, dripping wet. He'd been nearby, helping pull survivors from the cars. His chest rose and fell hard, his hair plastered, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. "She was here," he said hoarsely. "I saw her on the overpass, hooded, watching. She didn't run when the sirens came. She wanted me to see." Evelyn steadied him. "What else did you notice?" Ryan closed his eyes, replaying. "She leaned on the rail with her left hand. She wears the ring on that side, and she held something like a sketchbook wrapped in plastic." A sketchbook. Evelyn's stomach tightened. The killer wasn't just staging the murders, she was documenting them. Back at the station, Evelyn traced the moth with the numbers. She typed the verse into a search. Hebrews 11:1. "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." Faith, hope, evidence unseen. It wasn't just scripture, it was a manifesto. The killer was sending philosophy with her corpses. Marcus frowned. "Religious angle?" "No," Evelyn said. "Artistic. She's building a narrative. Each verse, each moth, it's her gallery. The city is her exhibition space." "Then we're the critics," Marcus muttered. "And she's daring us to review." Meanwhile, politics ignited. Judge Amelia Cross held a press conference demanding answers. Naomi Voss appeared on the steps of Halo Casting, tearfully pledging donations to victims' families. Behind the veneer of compassion, Evelyn saw only calculation. These women were too polished, too ready. The killer hated their world for a reason, and that reason was buried in secrets. That night, Evelyn followed her gut to Halo Casting. The building was quiet, but the lobby smelled faintly of stale perfume and wet carpet. She walked the hall, her flashlight sweeping across glossy headshots pinned to walls. Dozens of hopeful faces, each one a commodity. A sound echoed, a soft flutter. She turned sharply. On the floor ahead lay another moth, not folded carefully but shredded. Beside it a smear of wet ink, and scrawled on the wall in dripping black, "See her." Evelyn's breath caught. The killer wasn't hiding here. She was luring. When the trap nearly worked. Behind her a shadow moved. Evelyn spun, weapon drawn. But the figure darted into the stairwell, pale face flashing for a heartbeat before vanishing into rain. Evelyn chased, her boots hammering metal steps, but the phantom was too quick. By the time she burst onto the roof, the woman was gone, swallowed by storm. On the ground, Ryan stood waiting, panting. He'd run from the street, eyes wide. "I saw her climb. I thought you had her." "I almost did," Evelyn whispered, fury mixing with awe. For the first time, she'd seen the killer's eyes, cold, patient, familiar in a way she couldn't yet place. By dawn, the city was breaking. 4 murders in one night, 3 victims in a flood, panic exploding across airwaves. Jake Rowan's voice rising above it all, narrating with the zeal of a prophet. The phantom has become the storm, and the storm has become truth. Evelyn slammed the radio off. Her knuckles were white against the wheel. She knew now, this wasn't just murder. This was performance. Every victim chosen, every moth a note in a symphony, and every drop of rain a drumbeat pushing the city closer to collapse. And somewhere in the torrent, the pale woman with the moth pendant was already choosing her next canvas. By the time Section 2's chaos had burned itself into the bones of Ravenport, the phrase copycat had become poison in every briefing room. No one wanted to admit it, but the seams in the case were splitting, and with every new body the phantom's myth thickened. Evelyn Carter sat at her desk in the precinct, rain hammering against the blinds like impatient fingers. The city wasn't just scared anymore. It was doubting the police entirely, and doubt, she knew, was harder to kill than any murderer. The board in front of her looked bloated now, swollen with evidence. Moths, perfect, imperfect, shredded. Victims, glamorous and forgotten alike. Notes, verses, slogans, threads crisscrossing like tangled veins. She rubbed her eyes. For every answer, 3 new questions. Marcus Hale stepped in, coffee steaming in his hands, his expression grim. "Autopsy's back on the senator's son." "And?" Evelyn asked, already bracing herself. "Traces of the same compound as the other victims, at least superficially. But the dose was diluted and the application sloppy. Monroe says whoever did it didn't understand the chemical balance." "Meaning not the original killer?" Evelyn said. Marcus nodded. "Copycat." The word tasted bitter. It didn't make the senator's son any less dead. It only meant the storm had more hands than she could see. Later, Evelyn joined Dr. Lila Monroe in the lab. The coroner's office glowed cold, the hum of refrigeration units louder than the rain outside. Sophie Lang's torn journal page lay under glass, preserved from further smearing. "I ran ink analysis," Monroe said, adjusting her glasses. "It's old, not something you buy off a shelf now. Pre-2000s. Whoever wrote this uses vintage materials. That narrows your suspect pool. Or widens it to every eccentric in this city," Evelyn muttered. Monroe didn't smile. "There's something else. Look," she tapped the blackened tissue samples projected on the monitor. "These cells didn't just die. They were starved, systematically deprived of oxygen by a compound that binds tighter than carbon monoxide. You're not looking at poison in the classic sense. You're looking at art. Someone engineered this to leave a signature. Evelyn stared at the withered cells. Art. That word again. The killer was crafting corpses as if they were canvases. Which meant the copycat? The copycat was painting clumsy forgeries, cheap imitations of a master's work. The media frenzy swelled like the tide. Jake Rowan broadcast another episode, his voice curling like smoke through speakers. "There are always imitators," he said, his words soft but cutting. "But you know the real storm when it hits you. The phantom is still out there. The rest are just children playing in puddles." Marcus killed the volume, swearing. "How the hell does he always get there before us?" Evelyn's eyes narrowed at Rowan's photo pinned to the board. Charismatic, dangerous, always just close enough to touch the fire without burning. "Because someone is feeding him," she said. "Either he has a source in the department or he's the goddamn copycat," Marcus finished. The idea sat heavy between them. If Rowan wasn't just narrating the murders but performing some of them, then the line between messenger and monster had blurred. And Evelyn knew too well how intoxicating proximity to darkness could be. That night, Evelyn drove to Ryan Cole's apartment. The swimmer lived in a converted warehouse, its wide windows staring out at the floodlit pool below. Chlorine hung in the air like a ghost of his past. He opened the door shirtless, water still dripping from his shoulders. His body looked carved from discipline, but his eyes were hollow. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "I need to know if I can trust you," Evelyn replied. Ryan's jaw tightened. "Because you think I'm the copycat? Because you see things no one else does, and because you keep showing up where she is?" Ryan turned away, pacing. "I don't choose that. It chooses me. The rain, it's like it pulls me. Every time I can feel her there before I see her. Like current dragging me under." Evelyn studied him. Was it madness or instinct? She glanced at his sketchbook lying open on the counter. Pages and pages of the pale woman's face stared back. Too many. Too obsessive. "You're not helping your case," she said. "I'm not your case," Ryan snapped. His voice cracked, raw. "I'm drowning in hers." For a moment, the silence between them was louder than the storm outside. Evelyn finally said, "Then help me swim." The next day brought another development. Marcus stormed into the bullpen, files clutched in his fist. "We've got 2 separate eyewitness accounts of the phantom, same night. 2 different locations, miles apart." Evelyn's blood ran cold. "So either she's a ghost, or there's more than one," Marcus finished grimly. "And if that's true, Carter, this isn't one storm, it's a flood." The contradiction in eyewitness reports shattered what little certainty remained in the precinct. 2 witnesses, 2 locations, same night. One swore they saw the pale woman near the docks at 10:20 p.m. Rain slick on her hood, a silver ring glinting when lightning split the sky. Another across town at 10:27 p.m. claimed she walked into the rear entrance of Halo Casting, dripping wet, carrying what looked like a leather-bound journal. Impossible, unless the phantom was more than one person. Evelyn Carter stood before the board, staring at the overlapping times like they were mocking her. She had run calculations, mapped the distances, checked the storm logs. There was no way one woman could cover that ground in 7 minutes, not in a flood-choked city. The truth was bleeding out. The phantom wasn't singular. She was plural. The mayor's office was in uproar. Reporters shouted for answers. Judge Amelia Cross demanded protection. Naomi Voss announced an emergency gala fundraiser draped in black silk as if mourning made her righteous. But Evelyn could hear the undercurrent. These women weren't afraid for the city. They were afraid of exposure. The victims weren't random. They were part of their circle, their economy of beauty and power. Marcus slammed a fresh photo onto Evelyn's desk. From last night's gala rehearsal, look who's creeping around in the background. Evelyn leaned over the print. Grainy but undeniable. Jake Rowan, the reporter. He wasn't just covering the story, he was inside it. Bastards playing both sides, Marcus said, narrating the murders, then showing up where they happen. Evelyn studied the photo. Rowan's eyes weren't panicked. They weren't even curious. They were expectant. Watching the storm with the calm of someone who knew the thunder schedule. To that night, Evelyn cornered Rowan outside the studio where he recorded his podcast. The building was shabby, neon signs flickering in puddles. Rowan leaned against the door frame, cigarette glowing, rain misting his hair. "Detective Carter," he greeted smoothly. "Have you come to shut down my freedom of speech or to feed me another exclusive?" "You're too close to this," Evelyn said, stepping into his space. "Too specific. You describe the Phantom like you've seen her." Rowan smiled faintly. "Maybe I have." Her hand itched toward her badge. "Where?" He flicked ash into the rain. "Everywhere. Haven't you noticed, Detective? The Phantom isn't a woman. She's an idea, a performance. And performances demand an audience." He leaned closer, his whisper brushing her ear. "You're part of the audience, too." Before she could press him, headlights cut through the storm. A black SUV slid to the curb. Two men in tailored suits stepped out, umbrellas snapping open. One approached Rowan, slipping him a folded note. Rowan read it, smirked, and walked off into the rain without another word. Evelyn stood frozen, rage buzzing in her veins. He wasn't just a reporter. He was a messenger. Someone was pulling his strings. The following morning, chaos erupted at the precinct. An anonymous tip had identified Ryan Cole as the Phantom. A shaky video circulated online showing Ryan running from the rooftop where Evelyn had chased the pale woman. The angle, the framing, it was damning. Chief Briggs roared for his arrest. "Bring him in. The city needs a face, and this swimmer boy's guilty enough for the cameras." Evelyn's stomach twisted. She'd seen Ryan's terror, his obsession, his drowning memories, but not malice. Still, the pressure was unbearable. She found herself storming into his warehouse apartment, gun raised, heart pounding. Ryan stood in the pool when she arrived, submerged to his shoulders, staring at the ceiling as rain hammered the skylights. He didn't flinch when she entered. "You here to drown me too?" he asked, voice hollow. "Don't play games," Evelyn snapped. "Where were you last night?" "In the water," Ryan said. "Always in the water." His eyes met hers then, wide, desperate, unblinking. And Evelyn knew. He wasn't the copycat. He wasn't clean either. He was tangled, obsessed. Maybe unstable, but not the killer staging bodies. Still, her gun trembled in her hand. She could almost hear Briggs barking in her ear. "Give the city a name." Ryan whispered, "If you arrest me, she wins. Because then you'll stop looking for the real storm." Evelyn's finger hovered on the trigger. And for the first time in her career, she let instinct, not evidence, decide. She lowered the gun. Back at the station, Marcus confronted her. "You had him in your sights and you let him go? Christ, Carter, you're sinking with him." "No," Evelyn said, eyes blazing. "I'm swimming toward her." She pinned Rowan's photo higher on the board, beside Naomi Voss, Judge Cross, and Dr. Klein. The circle was closing. The Phantom wasn't just one woman. It was a network, a cult of beauty, art, and obsession. And Rowan was their voice. But if Ryan was right, if the rain itself remembered, then Evelyn had to dig deeper. because the city wasn't drowning in randomness anymore. It was drowning in choreography. The precinct had turned into a theater, each officer an unwilling actor performing for a restless city. Politicians paraded through its halls, media swarmed its doors, and every conversation dripped with suspicion. Evelyn Carter knew the Phantom was winning, not just in body count but in psychology. Fear had fractured the city, and now it was fracturing the police. Chief Briggs called another emergency briefing. His voice was gravel dragged across steel. Effective immediately, Ryan Cole is our primary suspect. His face is already out there. Public wants closure, we give them closure. Carter, Hale, you'll bring him in by tomorrow night. The room erupted in chatter. Evelyn stared at Briggs like he'd spoken another language. You're making us chase a man you know isn't guilty. That'll buy you 36 hours of peace and a lifetime of rot. Briggs slammed the table. Don't lecture me, the city's burning. We don't need truth, we need stability. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Stability built on lies was more fragile than glass. She glanced at Marcus, but his eyes stayed low. He wasn't backing her, not this time. So that night, Evelyn sat alone in her car outside Ryan's warehouse, rain thrumming like a heartbeat on the roof. Inside, the swimmer moved in slow laps, his body cutting the water with mechanical precision. He looked less like a suspect than a man trying to outrun himself. Her phone buzzed. A new anonymous text. You're chasing the wrong tide. Look closer to home. Attached was a photo, grainy, the morgue unmistakably. And in the corner of the shot, barely visible but damning, was Dr. Lila Monroe. Evelyn's chest tightened. Layla, her coroner, her ally, the woman who whispered truths about the victim's cells and chemical signatures, was standing over Sophie Lang's body at midnight, long after the autopsy was finished. And on the table beside her, a folded paper moth. The next morning, Evelyn confronted Lila in the lab. "Why were you here at midnight?" she demanded, slamming the photo down. Lila's eyes widened, then narrowed. "Where did you get this?" "Doesn't matter. Answer." Lila exhaled slowly, peeling off her gloves. "I was confirming a suspicion. The compound, the chemical burn, it wasn't just poison, it's a prototype. Something I'd only seen in research journals from Pure Glow Wellness." Evelyn's blood chilled. "Naomi Voss's company." "Yes. And guess who funded those trials quietly through an offshore account?" Lila pulled a file from her drawer, sliding it across. Judge Amelia Cross. The names were coalescing now, drawn together by money, influence, and an obsession with controlling bodies, models, victims, citizens. Evelyn realized the Phantom wasn't one person at all. It was a philosophy carried out by multiple hands. But if that was true, then the copycat theory wasn't a theory anymore. It was fact. There were originals and imitators, faithful disciples and reckless pretenders. The city wasn't hunting a phantom, it was hunting a hive. From that evening, Evelyn returned to the board, her marker cutting hard into the photos. Naomi, Amelia, Rowan, Pure Glow. Ryan, not a suspect, but a witness tethered to the tide. The pattern was almost clear. Marcus entered quietly, leaning against the doorframe. "You're going rogue, Carter. Briggs is ready to bury you." "Then let him dig the hole," she said without looking up. "You're gambling everything on a theory. Multiple killers, a cult of beauty, do you hear yourself? You sound like Rowan." Evelyn turned, fire in her eyes. "Rowan knows because someone's feeding him. He's not a prophet, he's a mouthpiece. And until we cut the voice, the city will keep listening." Marcus hesitated, then dropped something on her desk. A recorder. "Rowan came to me last night. Slipped this in my pocket before walking away, said you'd know what to do with it. Evelyn picked it up, hit play. Static. Then Rowan's voice. She's watching you, Carter. She's closer than you think. And when the rain stops, you'll be her final exhibit. The tape clicked off. Evelyn's reflection in the darkened window stared back at her, pale and shaken. The storm that night was merciless. Streets vanished under black water. Thunder swallowed voices. Evelyn left the precinct late, exhaustion clawing her bones. But as she crossed the parking lot, she felt it, the prickle on her neck, the weight of eyes. She spun. At the far edge of the lot, barely visible in the downpour, stood the pale woman. Hood low, ring flashing. For the first time, she wasn't a blur. She was clear, tangible, real. And she was smiling. Evelyn raised her gun, rain blinding her aim. "Freeze!" The woman tilted her head, unhurried. Then she lifted her hand and released something into the storm, a paper moth. The rain plastered it to the asphalt at Evelyn's feet, written across its wings in spidery ink, "You're next." Before Evelyn could move, the woman melted back into the storm. Evelyn's gun lowered slowly. Her pulse thundered louder than the sky. For the first time in her career, she realized she wasn't just hunting the phantom. The phantom was hunting her. The storm never eased. By the time Evelyn Carter woke in her apartment, Ravenport looked like it had been swallowed whole. Sirens wailed constantly through the drowned streets. Helicopters thumped over rooftops, and the mayor's voice echoed on every channel, promising the rain would pass, promising order in a city that had forgotten what that word meant. Evelyn didn't believe in promises anymore. Not from mayors, not from judges, not from anyone with power. She believed in patterns, in scars, in the marks killers left behind when they wanted to be seen. And right now, the city was one enormous crime scene. Her phone buzzed before she could pour coffee. Marcus. "Turn on Channel 8. She clicked the TV. Judge Amelia Cross filled the screen, framed by reporters and floodlights. Her black coat gleamed with rain, but her voice was steady, almost rehearsed. "These tragedies will not drown us," she declared. "I have authorized emergency funding for shelters and patrols. Pure Glow Wellness will provide supplies and medical aid. Together we will restore faith to Ravenport." Evelyn's hands clenched. Cross wasn't just posturing, she was laundering herself through the storm, painting her fingerprints over every crack. The public saw a savior. Evelyn saw a woman feeding the fire she claimed to extinguish. Then a reporter shouted, "Judge Cross, what about the rumors of your ties to Pure Glow's experimental trials?" Cross smiled serenely. "Lies spread by fear. I have nothing to hide." But Evelyn recognized the twitch at the corner of her mouth. The same twitch she'd seen in every liar who thought they'd beaten the truth. At the precinct, the task force looked half dead. Sleep was a luxury no one had touched in days. Briggs barked orders like a drowning man spitting water, but the officers barely listened anymore. Evelyn spread her files across the table. "Listen to me. Pure Glow isn't just a sponsor, it's the manufacturer of the compound killing these people. And Cross funneled money to cover it up. Naomi Voss fronted the company as a beauty brand, but behind closed doors they were experimenting on models, clients, anyone who signed a release form without reading it." "Experiments for what?" one detective asked. Evelyn's jaw tightened. "For control. A chemical that marks skin, blackens tissue, erases identity. Imagine selling that to governments, or using it to silence enemies. It isn't just art. It's commerce." The room went silent. Marcus leaned forward. "So the Phantom isn't killing at random, she's exposing the trials." Evelyn nodded grimly. and maybe punishing the ones who profited. Chief Briggs cut in, face red. You've lost it, Carter. This isn't a courtroom drama, it's a manhunt. Stop digging into judges and beauty queens and bring me a suspect I can put on TV. But Evelyn saw the flicker in his eyes. Fear. Briggs wasn't just ignoring the truth. He was terrified of it. That night, Evelyn and Marcus drove to Pure Glow's main facility on the edge of the city. Floodwater lapped at the gates, reflecting security lights like broken glass. The building loomed sterile, clinical, untouched by chaos. This place gives me the creeps, Marcus muttered, scanning the fence. Evelyn cut the lock and slipped inside. The halls smelled of antiseptic and something faintly sweeter, chemical and cloying. They passed glossy posters of smiling models with perfect skin, slogans plastered beneath them. Purity, power, perfection. But the deeper they went, the cleaner the walls became. Too clean. As if scrubbing had erased more than dust. In the sublevel, Evelyn found what she'd expected. A lab. Refrigerators hummed, beakers glistened, and shelves held vials labeled with codes she didn't recognize. Marcus cracked open a file cabinet. Dozens of consent forms spilled out, names Evelyn recognized, victims, witnesses, even Naomi Voss herself. But at the bottom of one drawer, Evelyn found something worse. A black leather journal, edges water-stained. She opened it. Pages filled with sketches of moths, anatomical drawings of human skin, and verses scrawled in red pencil. And in the margin of one page, Phase 4, Public Exhibition Carter Unarmed Catalyst. Evelyn's stomach dropped. She wasn't just chasing the storm anymore, she was its target. Back on the surface, thunder shook the city so violently the streetlights flickered. As Evelyn and Marcus slipped into the car, a voice crackled through the radio uninvited. Jake Rowan's podcast, live. Our detective heroine thinks she's the hunter, but every hunter eventually learns the truth. You are never outside the story. You are inside the story, and soon, Detective Carter, you will be its headline. Evelyn ripped the radio from the dash, smashing it against the console, but the words already crawled under her skin. Marcus whispered, "He's talking to you directly now." Evelyn nodded slowly, gripping the journal tighter. "Which means I'm closer than ever." By dawn, the storm had swollen into catastrophe. The Ravenport River had surged its banks, swallowing streets, swallowing cars, swallowing homes. Helicopters blared evacuation warnings, their spotlights sweeping across rooftops where families waved from the dark. The city was no longer living through a storm. It was drowning in it. For Evelyn, the timing was too perfect. Natural disaster or orchestration, the Phantom's message was being written across the city in water and ruin. At the precinct, chaos reigned. Phones rang without answer. Drenched civilians pushed through the lobby begging for shelter. Half the squad had been dispatched to manage the floods, leaving only a skeleton crew to hunt a killer who now thrived under cover of chaos. Chief Briggs was on the phone with the mayor shouting about National Guard deployment when Evelyn burst into the war room with Marcus. She slammed the Pure Glow journal onto the table. "This is proof," she snapped. "They knew. They planned every stage. They called me out by name." Briggs barely looked at it. "I don't care about your damn conspiracy theories, Carter. The city's underwater. We don't have time for your paranoia." "It's not paranoia if they're planning to exhibit me," she shot back. "Open your eyes. This isn't just murder, it's performance. And the finale is already written." But Briggs shoved the journal back at her, his jaw tight. "You're off this case." The room fell silent. Evelyn froze. Marcus swore under his breath. "What?" she whispered. "You're unstable. You're seeing cults where there are none. Hand in your badge. You're done." Evelyn felt the floor tilt beneath her, but as Briggs' glare bore into her, she caught something. His hand, trembling slightly as he folded the journal, closed. Fear. Briggs knew more than he admitted. And now he was shutting her down before she could uncover it. Outside, Marcus caught her arm. "Don't do anything stupid." "I don't have time for stupid," Evelyn growled. "If Briggs won't stop them, I will." She stormed into the flood, rain soaking her hair, journal clutched under her coat. The city's screams mixed with the sirens, but she had one destination in mind: Naomi Voss. The Pure Glow heiress was holding court in her penthouse, far above the drowning city. While families clung to rooftops, Naomi hosted an emergency gala, serving champagne to influencers and benefactors under candlelight chandeliers. When Evelyn pushed through the doors, dripping water onto the marble, heads turned. Naomi, flawless in silver silk, raised a perfect eyebrow. "Detective Carter," she purred, "how brave of you to arrive uninvited." "You're profiting off this storm," Evelyn snapped. "Pure Glow created the compound, cross-funded the trials, and now people are dying because of your obsession with beauty." Naomi sipped her drink calmly. "Obsession? No, detective, progress. Do you have any idea how much the world craves transformation? Women begged for our trials. They signed away their bodies for the promise of perfection. We merely delivered." Evelyn's fists clenched. "And when they died?" Naomi's smile widened, sharp as glass. "Death is inevitable, but beauty can be eternal." The crowd murmured, half shocked, half enthralled. Evelyn realized Naomi wasn't hiding her crimes. She was sermonizing them. "You're not chasing a killer," Naomi said, stepping closer. "You're chasing an idea. And ideas don't die, detective. They spread." Evelyn's hand brushed the butt of her gun, but before she could act, a commotion broke out at the window. A shadow moved against the lightning flash. A pale figure, hooded, perched on the balcony like a moth waiting to land. The room gasped. Naomi's eyes gleamed. The phantom had come to the party. Panic erupted as the figure crashed through the glass. Guests screamed, champagne flutes shattered. Evelyn lunged forward, but the phantom moved like water, weaving through the chaos. She reached Naomi, pressed a blackened hand against her cheek. Naomi gasped, the skin searing instantly, blooming with dark veins. "Perfection," the phantom whispered. Evelyn fired. The shot tore through the storm of bodies, grazing the phantom's arm. She staggered but did not fall. Instead, she threw Evelyn a look, calm, smiling, and then leapt back through the broken window into the flood below. By the time Evelyn reached the balcony, the figure was gone, swallowed by the storm. Behind her, Naomi writhed, half her face darkened like charred paper. Guests shrieked, and Evelyn knew. Naomi Voss, the untouchable queen, had just been marked. Back at the precinct, Evelyn found Marcus waiting grimly. "You shouldn't have gone alone." "She was there," Evelyn said, soaked and shaking. "The phantom, in the flesh, she attacked Naomi in front of everyone." Marcus's eyes widened. "Then why aren't you the one in cuffs right now?" Evelyn froze. "What do you mean?" Marcus handed her a fresh bulletin. Her stomach dropped. It was her face, her name. A citywide notice declaring Detective Evelyn Carter, armed and dangerous, suspected conspirator in the Phantom murders. Chief Briggs had turned the city against her. Rain pounded like war drums as Evelyn Carter slipped through the back alleys of Ravenport, her badge heavy in her pocket like a curse. For years it had been her shield. Now it was a death sentence. Every screen in the city carried her face. The detective who once hunted monsters was now the monster herself. She moved with her hood low, water seeping into her boots, the Pure Glow journal wrapped in plastic and strapped against her chest. If she was going down, she wasn't going down empty-handed. But the city wasn't just drowning in water. It was drowning in suspicion. As Evelyn darted past shuttered shops and flooded stairwells, she felt eyes at every window. People recognized her. A woman clutching her child whispered, "That's her!" A man in the shadows hissed, "Murderer!" Rumors spread faster than rain, and Briggs had weaponized them all. Evelyn had always trusted the storm to wash away lies. Tonight, it carried them. At the penthouse, Naomi Voss was a vision of ruined beauty. Half her face wrapped in gauze, the other half painted flawlessly. She sat before a mirror as her assistants hovered nervously. Her voice, however, remained steel. "They think scarring me will silence me," Naomi said coldly. "They don't understand. This makes me immortal. Tragedy is a stronger brand than perfection." Behind her, Judge Amelia Cross adjusted her coat. "You're not immortal. You're reckless. The Phantom isn't your puppet, Naomi. She's dismantling both of us." Naomi's laugh was brittle, sharp. "Then perhaps she and I are the same." Cross's eyes hardened. "No. She's not selling a product. She's selling fear. And unlike you, she doesn't need investors." As they argued, a small TV in the corner showed Evelyn's wanted notice. Both women turned to watch. Naomi whispered, "So, they've made her the villain." Cross smirked faintly. "How convenient. All storms need a scapegoat." Meanwhile, Evelyn reached the only place left she could trust, Ryan Cole's warehouse. She knocked in a rhythm they'd agreed upon silently during their last meeting. Ryan opened the door cautiously, his body glistening from the pool. He looked at her, really looked at her, soaked, hunted, exhausted, and simply stepped aside. "You're out of time," he said quietly. Inside, Evelyn spread the journal on the table. "They've planned a finale, a public exhibition, and I'm the centerpiece." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Where?" "I don't know. But if the storm doesn't stop, the entire city will be their theater." Ryan rubbed his temples, then said something that chilled her more than the rain ever had. "The water is hiding bodies." "What?" "The river's rising. It's pulling things from the banks. Last night I saw..." He swallowed hard. "I saw bags. Dozens tangled in the reeds, not new. Old. Like they've been waiting for the storm to drag them out." Evelyn felt bile rise in her throat. The Phantom wasn't just killing now, she'd been killing for years. And the flood was her confessional. By morning, the first of the bodies surfaced. A fisherman stumbled upon them near the east docks, plastic-wrapped corpses bobbing against the pilings. The news exploded, reporters trampling each other to capture the grotesque sight. The city shrieked. Briggs gave a statement with shaking hands. "These are the victims of Evelyn Carter. She's been hiding her crimes for years. Now the storm has revealed them." Evelyn watched from a dingy motel room, fists clenched. She knew the truth. The bodies weren't hers. They were Pure Glow's. They were test subjects, models, addicts, women erased before their names ever reached the papers. But the narrative had turned her into their executioner. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling Briggs was more than a pawn. He was too quick, too prepared. Maybe he wasn't just covering for Cross and Naomi, maybe he was part of it. Marcus texted her only 2 words. "They're watching." That night, Evelyn returned to the floodplain with Ryan, flashlights cutting through the mist. The water was littered with evidence. Journals sealed in plastic, broken vials with Pure Glow insignias, skeletal remains that bore the same blackened tissue as the Phantom's newest victims. Ryan waded waist-deep, pulling one bag onto the shore. He gagged as the tarp tore, revealing a woman's body, hair still braided with ribbon. Evelyn knelt beside it, tracing the ruined skin. "This isn't one killer," she murmured. "This is a system, and I was blind to it." Ryan looked at her, eyes wide. "Then how do you stop something that big?" Evelyn's gaze hardened. "You cut out the heart. Naomi, Cross, Briggs, whoever sits in the center of the web, you find them, and you tear them into the light." But before she could move, headlights pierced the floodplain. SUVs, dozens of them, armed men stepped out, flashlights sweeping, rifles raised. At their head, Briggs. His voice boomed over a loudspeaker. "Detective Carter, you are under arrest for murder, conspiracy, and treason against this city. Surrender now, or we open fire." Ryan tensed beside her. "They'll kill you." Evelyn steadied her breath, gripping her gun. "Then we don't surrender." The flood carried their reflections back at them. Briggs, Evelyn, Ryan, all poised at the brink of violence. And somewhere beyond the headlights, she felt another gaze. Watching, waiting, the phantom. Because this wasn't Briggs's finale. It was hers. The floodplain was a graveyard, and Evelyn Carter stood at its center with a gun in her hand and her city on her back. Chief Briggs's voice echoed through the loudspeaker, distorted by rain and rage. "Surrender, Carter, you can't outrun the truth." But Evelyn knew the truth was never what Briggs claimed. It was written in scars, in blackened flesh, in the eyes of the bodies now floating through the city. And Briggs wasn't shouting it, he was burying it. Ryan Cole crouched beside her in the reeds, water lapping against his chest. His swimmer's body shivered, but his voice was calm. "They're boxed in by the flood. Only one exit. If we move now, we can slip the net." Evelyn shook her head. "If we run, they'll chase us into the city. More people will die." Ryan stared at her, fierce and stubborn. "If you stay, you die. And then no one tells their story." The flashlights closed in. Evelyn's pulse thundered louder than the storm. She could see Briggs now, his trench coat snapping in the wind, his pistol drawn. He wasn't giving orders anymore. He was leading the hunt. And in his eyes wasn't authority. It was fanaticism. A voice broke the night before Evelyn could move, low, smooth, taunting. Chief Briggs, Ravenport's finest attack dog, always eager to bark, never eager to think. The officers froze. The sound wasn't coming from a megaphone, it was everywhere, riding the storm. Speakers hidden in the floodplain? "Detective Carter is not your enemy. She's your mirror, and mirrors crack when you strike too hard." Briggs spun, shouting into the night. "Rowan, you shut your mouth before I—" But Jake Rowan wasn't there. His voice was, broadcasted live, echoing across the storm. Evelyn realized with a jolt he'd hijacked the city's emergency frequency. His podcast had become the voice of God. "Ravenport," Rowan intoned, "do you see? Your leaders chase phantoms, your judges paint poison as beauty, and your police hunt their own. But the flood has washed their masks away. Look at Briggs, look at Cross, look at Voss, and look at Carter, framed, hunted, but still breathing for now." The last words coiled around Evelyn like a noose. Gunfire erupted. Briggs, enraged, ordered his men forward. "Take her!" Ryan grabbed Evelyn's arm, dragging her through the reeds. Bullets sliced water into fountains around them. They plunged deeper into the flood, headlights blinding their escape. Evelyn fired once, twice, dropping 2 lights before they could pin her down. "Go!" Ryan shouted. They dove beneath a broken pier, clinging to its beams as boots thundered overhead. Evelyn's lungs burned, but she stayed still. Above, Briggs's growl carried. "She won't get far. She wants to play martyr. Fine. We'll drown her with the rest." Hours later, Evelyn and Ryan crawled into the shadows of an abandoned boathouse. Water dripped through the roof, forming pools that mirrored their broken faces. Evelyn's arms trembled as she unwrapped the Pure Glow journal. Ryan whispered, "Why, Briggs? Why frame you? Why protect them?" Evelyn flipped through the sketches, the red scrawls, the chemical codes. Her finger stopped on one page, a ledger, names, dates, payments. One name repeated more than any other, Briggs. Her stomach dropped. He wasn't protecting them. He was funding them. Ryan's eyes widened. The chief? He's not just complicit, Evelyn whispered. He's part of it. Pure Glow wasn't just a corporate scheme, it was a machine, and Briggs has been oiling it with blood money. Before she could say more, Ryan froze, his gaze locked on the far corner of the boathouse. A figure stood there, silent, pale in the moonlight. The Phantom. Evelyn's gun snapped up, but the figure didn't move. Slowly, the hood fell back, and for the first time, Evelyn saw her face. Not a stranger, not Naomi, not Cross. It was Sophie Lang, the model whose death had started everything, the first blackened body. But she wasn't dead. She was alive, and her eyes glowed with something unholy. "You buried me in water," Sophie whispered, her voice carrying like the storm. "Now I'll drown you in truth." For a long moment, Evelyn could only stare. Sophie Lang, the first victim, the girl whose blackened body had launched the storm of murders, stood alive in front of her, skin pale but unmarked, eyes burning with a feverish light. Ryan whispered, almost reverent, "It's impossible. We saw the photos, the autopsy." Sophie smiled, and it was not the smile of the innocent. "Photos can be staged. Autopsies can be falsified. Don't you know by now? In Ravenport, death is just another mask." Evelyn's gun trembled in her hand. She had spent weeks chasing a shadow called the Phantom. And now she realized the shadow had a name, a face, a story twisted into something monstrous. "You were supposed to be dead," Evelyn breathed. "I was," Sophie said calmly. "I was supposed to be discarded like all the others. Pure Glow burned me, poisoned me, carved me into their masterpiece. But I didn't die, I endured. And when I opened my eyes, I understood." "Understood what?" Ryan demanded. Sophie stepped forward, her soaked cloak dragging across the floorboards. "That perfection is a lie. That beauty is a weapon. And that the only way to tear the mask from Ravenport's face is to become uglier than the truth it hides." Evelyn lowered her gun a fraction. Sophie's words weren't just the ramblings of a victim. They were the manifesto of someone who had transformed pain into vengeance. "You're the Phantom," Evelyn whispered. Sophie tilted her head. "Phantom, angel, monster. Call me what you like, but I am not finished." At City Hall, Judge Amelia Cross poured whiskey into a crystal glass, her composure cracking at last. The images of Naomi's scarred face flooded every news channel, the footage of Evelyn fleeing the penthouse plastered across headlines. "This city is unraveling," she muttered. Her aide stammered, "Should we issue another statement?" Cross's eyes sharpened. "No. Every word I speak ties me deeper to Voss. We let the detective take the fall, and if necessary, we let her burn for all of us." But deep down, she felt the ground shifting. Briggs was out of control. Naomi was half destroyed, and Rowan's voice was poisoning the city against her. Cross realized something chilling. She wasn't steering the narrative anymore. She was drowning in it. Naomi, meanwhile, sat before a wall-length mirror, tracing the blackened scar that cut her beauty into two halves. Makeup artists begged her to let them conceal it, but she refused. "Don't you see?" she told them. "This is the face of survival. This is power." When her assistants left, Naomi leaned closer to her reflection, whispering, "You may think you've marked me, Sophie, but scars sell better than skin." Behind her, the lights flickered. For a fleeting second, Naomi swore she saw Sophie's reflection instead of her own, eyes burning, mouth whispering, "You'll never wash it off." Naomi shivered, but she did not look away. Back in the boathouse, Evelyn tried to pierce Sophie's mask. "If you want justice, help me expose them. Cross, Naomi, Briggs, they're the ones who need to fall. Not civilians, not strangers in the street." Sophie's laugh was soft, chilling. "You still think small, detective. You think justice comes from trials and handcuffs. I thought the same once. But do you know what happens to a girl when her body is treated like canvas? When her pain is stitched into product launches? She stops asking for justice. She takes it." Ryan stepped forward, desperate. "Sophie, listen. Whatever they did to you, Evelyn's not the enemy. She's fighting the same system." But Sophie's gaze lingered on Evelyn. "No. She's the symbol of the system, the loyal detective, the dog who guards the gate. That's why Briggs framed you, Evelyn. Because even your betrayal makes the city believe in order. You are their mask." Evelyn's throat tightened. Sophie wasn't just punishing the corrupt. She was dismantling belief itself. Suddenly, Sophie threw something onto the table. A mask, white porcelain streaked with black veins. Evelyn recognized it instantly. It was found on one of the earliest victims. "You think the flood revealed the dead," Sophie said softly. "But those bodies were just rehearsal. The exhibition hasn't begun." Her eyes locked with Evelyn's. "And you, detective, will be the final mask." Lightning flared, and in that moment, Sophie vanished into the storm, slipping through the shattered boathouse door before Evelyn could react. As the night bled into morning, Jake Rowan's voice surged again through hijacked frequencies. "Citizens of Ravenport, the masks have been lifted. Sophie Lang lives. The Phantom walks. And the woman sworn to protect you is caught between truth and silence. Will she fight for you? Or will she fall with them?" Every household, every radio, every emergency channel buzzed with his words. The city was no longer led by its mayor or its judges. It was being narrated by a man who never stepped into daylight. And as Evelyn listened from the shadows, soaked and trembling, she realized Sophie wasn't the only phantom haunting Ravenport. The city itself was wearing masks, and she was running out of time to rip them away. The rain had eased by morning, but the floodwaters remained, brown, oily, and filled with secrets that had no intention of staying hidden. The river spit out its truths, one body at a time. By sunrise, fishermen and rescue divers had reported dozens of corpses drifting into the harbor. Some were wrapped in Pure Glow's plastic sheeting. Others bore the unmistakable burns of the compound. But a handful were different, newer, fresher, their faces almost intact. Evelyn stood over one such body, her hood pulled low as Ryan helped her drag it into the shadows of a collapsed pier. The woman's throat had been slit, her eyes left open, glassy and accusing. In her clenched fist was a scrap of fabric, dark silk embroidered with a crest Evelyn recognized instantly. Naomi Voss's family insignia. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Sophie had left a message in the drowned woman's hand. Naomi wasn't just an accomplice anymore, she was prey. Meanwhile, Naomi was already preparing her counterattack. Wrapped in designer bandages, she strode into a live television studio. The city was starving for a statement, and she would feed it. When the red light blinked on, Naomi leaned into the camera, her scar framed perfectly under stage lighting. "Ravenport," she said smoothly. "You have been lied to. My company did not create monsters, we created hope. But Detective Evelyn Carter has twisted that hope into chaos. She hides behind the myth of a phantom, but I have proof she orchestrated these killings herself. She held up photographs, doctored images of Evelyn near crime scenes, files with her signature crudely forged. The anchors gasped. The feed spread instantly across social media. Naomi's voice dropped to a whisper, intimate and venomous. Do not pity Detective Carter. Fear her. Chief Briggs watched the broadcast from his office, fists clenched. Naomi's theatrics irritated him, but they served his cause. The city was on edge, and he intended to break it. Lock down the bridges, he barked into his radio. Curfew begins at sundown. Anyone aiding Carter will be detained. Anyone resisting will be shot. The sergeant hesitated. Sir, that's martial law. Briggs slammed his desk. This isn't law, it's survival. Do it. As the order went out, Ravenport became a prison. Military trucks rolled through the streets, spotlights sweeping alleys. The city wasn't hunting a killer anymore, it was hunting Evelyn Carter. Back in the boathouse, Evelyn stared at the drowned woman's body, the silk scrap still clutched in her fist. She wants me to see this, Evelyn muttered. Ryan shook his head. Sophie's playing you. She doesn't want allies. She wants puppets. Evelyn's eyes darkened. Maybe. But if Naomi is in Sophie's crosshairs, then we're closer to the truth than ever. She leaned against the wall, exhaustion pressing into her bones. I can't keep running. If Briggs has locked down the city, we'll be caught in hours. We need a plan. Ryan crouched beside her, his voice steady. So what's it going to be? Do we stop Sophie or join her? Evelyn looked down at the drowned body, at the hatred stitched into its final grip. Sophie's war was cruel, but it was targeting the right monsters. Naomi, Cross, Briggs. If Evelyn fought her, she risked becoming the city's scapegoat until the end. But if she sided with her, she might save the city by burning it to ash. That night, Jake Rowan's voice returned, louder than ever, carried by pirate transmitters strung across rooftops. The masks are cracking, Ravenport. Naomi Voss sells lies. Amelia Cross writes them into law, and Briggs enforces them with blood. But one mask remains, the detective's. Will Evelyn Carter peel it away, or will she wear it until it smothers her? The city waits. The flood rises. The stage is set. Every word dug deeper into Evelyn's chest. For the first time, she realized the choice wasn't just hers. It belonged to the city, and the city was hungry for a reckoning. Ravenport did not wake to a sunrise. It woke to fire. By dawn, 2 warehouses near the harbor erupted in simultaneous explosions, flames licking across the floodwater like torches set to oil. Sirens shrieked, helicopters roared overhead, and the city, already suffocating under Briggs's curfew, descended into panic. On the cracked brick walls near the blast sites, a message was scrawled in dripping black paint. The beautiful will burn. Sophie Lang had made her move. Evelyn Carter and Ryan Cole watched the plumes from the window of an abandoned high-rise. They hadn't slept in days. The city's broadcast channels painted Evelyn as the mastermind behind the chaos, Naomi's scarred face dramatizing every report. She's escalating, Ryan muttered, his jaw tight. It's not just bodies anymore, it's a war. If we don't stop her now, there won't be a city left to save. Evelyn clenched her fists. She wanted to agree, but in the blackened smoke, she also saw the truth Sophie had been screaming from the start. Naomi's empire was cracking. Briggs's authority was slipping. Cross's hold on the courts was thinning. Sophie wasn't just killing, she was dismantling. But how many innocents would drown before the machine collapsed? At Naomi Voss's penthouse, the scarred magnate stood before a crowd of reporters, her gauze discarded. The wound that slashed across her cheek was horrific, yet Naomi's poise turned it into theater. "This scar," she declared, voice steady, "is the mark of Ravenport's enemy. I wear it not as shame, but as proof that I survived when Sophie Lang tried to destroy me. I survived when Evelyn Carter betrayed us. And I will lead this city into a new era where monsters have no stage." The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Naomi knew the scar had transformed her into a martyr. Where Sophie thrived on fear, Naomi thrived on spectacle, and in a city starving for saviors, her broken face was the feast. But behind the curtain, Naomi's hands shook, because Sophie had promised her something in that drowned woman's hand. "You are next." Jamelia Cross pored over evacuation reports with a sinking heart. Briggs's lockdown had backfired. Streets were rioting, supplies were drying up, and Rowan's voice blared from hacked radios like scripture. "The city is bleeding," one aide said. "It's already dead," Cross replied grimly. "The only question is who claims the corpse." Her phone buzzed with an encrypted message. 3 words, unsigned. "The flood rises." Cross's blood ran cold. She recognized the phrase. It was Sophie's. Meanwhile, Evelyn and Ryan crept into the municipal archives, the one place Briggs's men rarely patrolled. Floodwater slicked the marble floor. Rats skittered across overturned shelves. They moved by flashlight, searching the basement stacks until Ryan froze. "Here," he whispered, holding up a waterlogged file. It was Pure Glow's blueprint. Not the cosmetics Naomi flaunted, but the experimental division. Project Lumina, photos of burned victims, ledger entries, chemical analyses, and worse, lists of names. Over 200. Evelyn's breath caught. Many of the names matched the bodies being pulled from the flood. But others, dozens of others, had no record of ever existing in Ravenport's files. They'd been erased, hidden before they were even missed. Ryan whispered, "This isn't Sophie's war. This is genocide." Before Evelyn could answer, the building shuddered. An explosion echoed outside, followed by screams. They ran to the window. Across the street, the district courthouse was engulfed in fire, and scrawled across its steps in blood-red paint, "Judge Cross wears the final mask." Ryan's voice was hoarse. "She's not stopping. She's tearing down every pillar. Naomi Briggs Cross, she'll leave nothing." Evelyn gripped the file tighter. Sophie's vision was clear, but so was the cost. The city wasn't choosing between good and evil anymore. It was choosing what kind of monster it wanted to follow. The firestorm at the courthouse raged for hours. Fire crews fought until their engines sputtered dry, while Briggs's men cordoned off the district with rifles. The blaze painted the floodwaters crimson, turning Ravenport into a city reflected in blood. Evelyn and Ryan slipped through the chaos like ghosts, clutching the Pure Glow files. Every street corner was plastered with her face, wanted posters, looping broadcasts on emergency monitors. Naomi's campaign had worked. Detective Carter was the devil in the eyes of the city. Ryan muttered, "We can't keep running. Every block is a trap." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "Then we stop running. We start cutting." Naomi Voss struck first. She launched the Resilience campaign. Billboards across the skyline showing her scarred face above slogans like, "Strength is beautiful," and "Fear has no throne here." She filmed a viral commercial, bloodied but smiling, her voice dripping with practiced conviction. "I wear the mark of a monster," she said into the camera. But Ravenport, I am not broken, I am reborn, and together we will silence Sophie Lang. We will silence Evelyn Carter. Millions watched. Naomi's scar became a brand, her pain a weapon. While Sophie preached destruction, Naomi sold survival. And in a city desperate for hope, survival sold better than vengeance. But Sophie was not silent. 2 nights later, as Naomi delivered a live address from the Grand Pavilion, the stage lights flickered. For one horrifying second, every screen in the hall replaced Naomi's face with Sophie's, eyes burning, lips whispering, "Your beauty will rot." The audience screamed. Naomi froze, then forced a smile, turning fear into defiance. "You see, Ravenport," she declared. "She fears me so much she hides in shadows. But I do not fear her. I stand before you scarred and unbroken." The crowd roared with applause, but in Naomi's chest, terror coiled like a snake. Sophie hadn't touched her tonight. She was promising she would. Meanwhile, Briggs grew more ruthless. Checkpoints sprang up on every bridge. Officers stormed apartments. Suspects disappeared without trial. The city was suffocating under martial law. In a candlelit command center, Briggs snarled at his captains. Naomi feeds the people lies, Sophie feeds them fear. But Carter? Carter is the infection. Cut her out and the city heals. He slammed his fist onto the table. Find her. I don't care if you have to drown every block. Evelyn, hidden in the underbelly of a flooded subway, pored over the Pure Glow file with Ryan. The ledger gnawed at her, the 200 names, the erased identities. Then she saw one entry circled in red ink, a name she hadn't heard in years, Sophia Langford. She blinked, heart thudding. Sophie Lang. Langford. Ryan leaned closer. It's her, isn't it? She wasn't just a victim, she was selected. Evelyn traced the notes beside the name. Subject 01, prototype viable, trauma-resistant, reconditioning commenced. Her chest turned cold. Sophie hadn't been the first mistake. She had been the first design. Ryan whispered, horrified. They didn't just experiment on her, they built her. Sophie isn't fighting Pure Glow, she is Pure Glow's legacy. Evelyn's stomach twisted. Sophie wasn't merely the phantom. She was the living embodiment of the system Evelyn wanted to destroy. And if the city chose Sophie, it was choosing the very nightmare it believed it was escaping. Suddenly, their radio crackled. Jake Rowan's voice cut through the static. Detective Carter, I know you're listening. The city is burning and your silence burns it faster. Sophie walks the flood like a prophet. Naomi sells her scar like a crown and Briggs tightens his noose. But you can end them. Find the mask, tear it off, and let the city see its last breath before the silence. The transmission ended, leaving only the storm. Ryan turned to her, eyes fierce. He's right. This doesn't end until you choose. Do we destroy Sophie or do we let her destroy them? Evelyn looked at the files, at the names, at Sophie's circled entry. Her choice wasn't just about saving lives anymore. It was about deciding which monster would inherit the ashes of Ravenport. The Grand Pavilion glittered with chandeliers and polished marble, but beneath the glamour was fear. Naomi Voss had summoned her most powerful allies, politicians, financiers, celebrities, promising a speech that would prove her indomitable control. The cameras rolled as Naomi, scar illuminated by stage lights, declared, Ravenport will not kneel to terror. We will not bow to the phantom, and we will not allow a traitor detective to twist our pain into chaos. Tonight I unveil the future, Pure Glow reborn, stronger than ever. She gestured and curtains parted to reveal a new product line, sleek bottles shimmering like liquid fire. The crowd erupted in applause, investors whispering eagerly. But then the chandeliers flickered, the giant screens froze. Static crawled across every image, and Sophie's face filled the walls. Her eyes blazed, her voice echoing through the hall like a funeral hymn. The beautiful will burn, starting with their queen. The lights cut out, screams shattered the air. When they returned, one chandelier lay crashed on the floor, glass and blood scattered across the marble. A guest lay beneath it, skull crushed. Naomi trembled, but she forced her composure. "Keep recording," she hissed to her cameraman. "Show them I do not break." But her eyes darted to the shadows, terrified. Sophie was already there. Across the city, Briggs tightened his fist. Tanks rolled down boulevards, soldiers dragged civilians into vans. He declared Sophie's followers domestic terrorists and ordered public executions of suspects at dawn. On a rain-soaked plaza, 3 hooded prisoners knelt before cameras as soldiers cocked rifles. Evelyn and Ryan watched from a rooftop, horror etched across their faces. "She's lost control of them," Ryan whispered. "No," Evelyn muttered. "Briggs is showing the city what tyranny looks like. He thinks fear will save him." She clenched the Pure Glow file in her hand. "But fear only feeds Sophie." Judge Amelia Cross sat alone in her office, city maps spread before her. Her aides had fled, her allies abandoned her. The courthouse still smoldered from Sophie's fire. For the first time in decades, Amelia Cross tasted despair. She lifted a revolver from her drawer, stared at it for a long, trembling moment. Then she set it down and reached for her phone instead. She dialed a number no one knew she still had. Evelyn Carter's. When Evelyn answered, Cross's voice was brittle but steady. "You think I wear the final mask. But I can give you what Sophie never will. Proof. Proof Naomi's empire was built on the dead. Proof Briggs is a butcher. Meet me, detective, before the city drowns." That night, Evelyn stood on a rooftop overlooking the pavilion, rain soaking her coat. She had the files, she had Cross's promise, and she had Sophie's vow echoing in her mind. Ryan asked, "What's the move?" Evelyn's heart pounded. "The city doesn't need another speech, it doesn't need another riot, it needs the truth." "I'm done hiding." She raised her radio, switched to an open frequency, and spoke into the storm. "This is Detective Evelyn Carter. You've heard Naomi's lies, you've seen Briggs's brutality, you've felt Sophie's vengeance. But I have the truth in my hands, and I will show you who they are. Every mask, every scar, every body." Her voice cracked, but it carried. Across the city, radios buzzed to life, televisions hijacked by her broadcast. "For weeks, you've asked who the Phantom is. But the real question is, who made her?" She held up Sophie's file, the circled name glowing under her flashlight. "She isn't just a victim, she was their first creation. Project Lumina's child. The monster they forged and unleashed. And now they want to blame her for burning the city they poisoned." The words spilled like gasoline. Ryan whispered, "Evelyn, you just declared war on everyone." Evelyn lowered the radio. "No, I just tore off the first mask." Somewhere in the shadows of the pavilion, Sophie watched, lips curling into a smile. The detective finally learns to burn, and Ravenport held its breath, knowing the silence that followed would be soaked in blood. The broadcast rolled like thunder through Ravenport. Radios screeched awake in dim apartments. Televisions flickered in bars where soldiers had broken the locks, and old pirated monitors buzzed in abandoned subway tunnels. Evelyn Carter's voice cut through every shadow, carrying the Pure Glow files like a torch. And for the first time in weeks, the city stopped. Stopped to listen. Stopped to breathe. Stopped to weigh a truth that was uglier than any fire Sophie could set, uglier than any speech Naomi could stage. Evelyn had not spoken like a politician, not like a savior. She had spoken like someone drowning in the same flood as the people listening. And the city recognized the voice of one of its own. By dawn, the silence shattered. Riots exploded in the North End. Naomi's campaign billboards were torn down, splattered in red paint. Some were burned in the streets while mobs screamed, "Pure glow is poison." Sophie was one of them. Across the river, Briggs's soldiers fired tear gas into alleys where Evelyn's words echoed from speakers strung by Rowan's loyalists. For every protester scattered, 10 more rose. Evelyn hadn't called for war, but she had lit one anyway. Naomi Voss sat in her penthouse, 3 security teams stationed on every floor. Her scar throbbed under the powder caked across it, makeup she smeared on with trembling hands. She replayed Evelyn's broadcast again and again. Sophie's file, her name, Sophia Langford, branded in red circle. The revelation gnawed at Naomi's foundation like termites. "Turn it off," she snapped, smashing her glass against the wall. But she couldn't silence the voice in her head. Sophie wasn't a ghost born from shadows. She was a creation, a project, a living relic of Naomi's empire. Her empire was rotting from the inside, and every ally smelled the stench. Investors pulled contracts. Politicians withdrew endorsements. Naomi's phone lit with angry messages demanding explanations, demanding cover-ups, demanding a scapegoat. And Naomi realized she wasn't the queen anymore. She was the next sacrifice. Briggs reacted with fury. From his fortified command bunker, he ordered entire neighborhoods blacked out. Power grids collapsed. Military convoys sealed bridges and shot anyone who resisted curfew. Evelyn's broadcast, he claimed, was terrorist propaganda, engineered to destabilize Ravenport. But the footage was already everywhere. Smeared across pirate servers, copied on flash drives, projected against skyscraper walls. He could shoot civilians in the street, but he couldn't shoot an idea. Briggs stared at the screens, veins throbbing in his temples. Carter thinks she can expose me? She thinks truth will save them? He slammed his fist down, shattering his whiskey glass. If the city won't obey fear, then let it choke on it. Judge Amelia Cross watched the chaos unfold from her shadowed chamber. Her once pristine courtroom now smelled of mildew and ash, files floating in waterlogged cabinets. She poured herself whiskey at 9 a.m. and sipped, her hand shaking. Evelyn's broadcast had forced her hand. The names, the ledger, Cross had seen them long before. She had hidden them, protected them, because Pure Glow had made her career, her power, her fortune. But the tide was turning, and tides didn't spare anyone. Cross stared at her revolver again. She had thought about pulling the trigger for herself. But Sophie's painted message on the courthouse steps haunted her. Judge Cross wears the final mask. Perhaps Sophie was right. Perhaps Cross's mask needed tearing off. The question was, by whose hand? Evelyn and Ryan huddled in the shadows of an abandoned warehouse. The Pure Glow files spread across a battered desk. Rain leaked through the roof, dripping like a slow metronome. Ryan broke the silence. You know what you did out there, right? You just declared open war against 3 of the most powerful people in this city. Briggs, Naomi, Cross. They'll stop at nothing now. Evelyn didn't look up. Good. Maybe when they bare their teeth, the city will finally see the monsters they are. Ryan leaned forward, voice low. And Sophie? You exposed her too. Do you really think she'll let that go? Evelyn's eyes finally lifted hard and unwavering. I don't care. Sophie wanted to play executioner. I just showed the city who built her gallows. If she comes for me, she comes, but I won't run anymore. To that night, Rowan's voice returned to the airwaves carried on the skeleton of Evelyn's broadcast. The detective has spoken. The masks are slipping. Naomi bleeds beneath her paint. Briggs strangles a city that refuses to die. Judge Cross drinks in silence while her sins flood her chambers. And Sophie, Sophie, Ravenport now knows your birth. You are not myth. You are machine. You are the child of poison, and children always come home. His laughter crackled like broken glass before the feed cut. And in a drenched alley 2 blocks from the pavilion, Sophie Lang smiled under her hood, her eyes reflecting the flames consuming the skyline. For the first time since the flood began, she didn't feel like a phantom. She felt like something sharper, something older. A prophecy. The morning after Evelyn's broadcast, Ravenport woke to a sky the color of ash. The floodwaters shimmered with oil slicks, reflecting fires that hadn't burned out from the night before. The city had always felt suffocated, but now it felt strangled, as if invisible hands pressed against every throat. Naomi Voss stared at herself in the mirror of her penthouse suite. Her scar gaped across her cheek, half hidden under heavy foundation. No amount of makeup could bury the truth Evelyn had set free. She whispered to her reflection, "You are still the queen." But the reflection didn't answer. Her phone erupted with calls. Investors demanded explanations. Politicians accused her of treason, of hiding Sophie's existence. On the financial networks, stock tickers showed Pureglow plummeting. Naomi gathered her board of directors in a gilded conference hall, every chandelier glittering like a warning. She stood before them, her scar deliberately uncovered, and tried to seize control. "She wants you to believe I created a monster," Naomi told them, her voice cold and sharp. "But Sophie Lang is not my sin. She is my enemy. And Evelyn Carter, she is the one who dragged this poison into the light." One of the directors, an old man with trembling hands, interrupted. "The files show otherwise. The ledger has your signature." Naomi's mask cracked. "Do you think I built this empire on weakness? Do you think I would leave a paper trail that damns me? The Phantom forged those files. She forged them to break us." But the room was not convinced. Eyes avoided hers. Voices muttered against her. Naomi Voss, the queen of Pureglow, felt her throne slipping away. When the board adjourned, several directors didn't shake her hand. 2 refused to meet her gaze. Naomi understood it wouldn't be long before someone inside her own empire carved her out like rotten flesh. Meanwhile, General Briggs unleashed fury. On the steps of City Hall, he ordered a live execution. Cameras lined the square, reporters pressed against barricades, and citizens were forced at gunpoint to watch. 3 masked prisoners were dragged before him. "This city is choking on lies," Briggs roared, his voice booming across loudspeakers. "Terrorists think they can spread chaos. They think they can hide behind myths and files. But I will show you what happens to those who defy order." He ripped the mask off the first prisoner. It wasn't Sophie, it wasn't Evelyn. It was a terrified teenager, eyes wide, face bruised. Briggs didn't care. He signaled and soldiers fired. The body crumpled, blood pooling at the base of the steps. Screams erupted. The second prisoner wailed, begging for mercy. Ryan Cole watched from a rooftop across the square, bile rising in his throat. "He's lost it," Ryan whispered. "He's not trying to stop Sophie. He's trying to drown the city in terror." Evelyn's hand clenched around her pistol. Every instinct screamed at her to intervene, but she knew if she stepped forward now, she would be dead before her voice reached the crowd. Instead, she forced herself to watch Briggs pull the trigger again, silencing the second prisoner. The third convulsed, sobbing prayers to a god who had long abandoned Ravenport. "Carter," Ryan muttered, voice breaking. "If we don't move soon, there won't be a city left to save." That night, Sophie struck. The district gala, one of the last symbols of Ravenport's upper-class excess, glittered with chandeliers, champagne, and music. Naomi had skipped attendance, too dangerous. Judge Cross had skipped too cowardly. But dozens of bankers, lawyers, and officials gathered anyway, desperate to pretend the city still belonged to them. The music stopped at 9:17, the lights cut at 9:18, and when the backup generators stuttered alive, every chandelier swayed with something new. Bodies, dozens of them hanging upside down, blood dripping onto the marble floor. Gasps turned to screams. Guests bolted for the exits, but the doors were sealed from the outside. And through the speakers, Sophie's voice purred, "The beautiful will burn, but first they will hang." Gunfire erupted from her followers in the balconies. Masked figures descended ropes, slicing through the crowd. The gala turned into slaughter, blood-soaking gowns and tuxedos. News cameras caught fragments before feeds were cut. Images of the rich screaming as they were dragged into piles. Images of masked phantoms raising torches over champagne-soaked linen. By midnight, the gala was nothing but ashes and corpses dangling like grotesque chandeliers. Sophie Lang had turned Ravenport's decadence into a grave. Judge Amelia Cross sat in her darkened chamber when the news reached her. Her whiskey glass trembled in her hand. She had thought Sophie was vengeance, poetic and sharp. But this was butchery. Cross whispered, "God help us." But even as she said it, she knew there was no God here. Only masks, only lies. She reached again for her revolver, but her hand faltered. Instead, she pulled out the envelope she had hidden for years, a folder of files Naomi had begged her to bury, the ones Evelyn hadn't yet uncovered. It was time to choose. Evelyn Carter had forced her hand. Evelyn and Ryan huddled in their warehouse hideout as rain hammered the roof. Rowan's voice crackled through the radio again, low and feverish. "The city is choking. The rich swing in their ballrooms. The poor choke on gas in the streets. The general spills blood in daylight. And you, detective, you hold the blade that can cut the last throat. But will you swing it?" Ryan slammed the radio off. "He's baiting you." Evelyn didn't answer. Her mind replayed the images. Briggs's execution, Sophie's massacre, Naomi's trembling reflection, Cross's silence. The city wasn't just choking. It was suffocating. And Evelyn knew. Soon she would have to decide who to cut free and who to let drown. Naomi Voss had always believed power was an inheritance. You claimed it, wore it, displayed it. But as she stood before the mirror in her penthouse, scar glowing under the unforgiving light, she realized power was something else entirely. It was survival. And she was running out of it. The footage of the gala massacre looped on every news channel. Sophie's followers had butchered Ravenport's elite, and now her own board was deserting her. Sponsors were gone. Banks were seizing assets. Pure Glow was not just collapsing. It was rotting in real time. Naomi's reflection stared back at her, trembling, desperate. "No," she whispered to herself. "This city needs a queen. Queens don't bleed. Queens don't bow." She reached for her phone and dialed a number she swore she'd never use again. A number belonging to a man she once betrayed to rise higher. "Briggs," she said when his growl answered. "We need each other." General Briggs was already in motion. His crackdown after the executions had not quieted Ravenport, it had ignited it. Entire neighborhoods rebelled, throwing Molotovs at armored vehicles. Soldiers fired into crowds until the streets ran with blood. But still the city would not kneel. He listened to Naomi's plea with a sneer. "You want protection? You want soldiers guarding your tower while the city burns?" "I can still rally them," Naomi insisted. "My voice still matters. I can shift the tide if you back me. We crush Sophie together. We hang Carter as the traitor she is. And we show Judge Cross her time is done." Briggs spat into his ashtray. "Your voice doesn't matter. Your scar sells ads, nothing more." But Naomi had one weapon left. "I have Cross's files, the ones Evelyn hasn't uncovered yet, the ones that tie you to the disappearances. If I fall, Briggs, so do you." The silence on the line told her she'd won. For now. So that night, Naomi made her move. She stormed the Ravenport Broadcast Network headquarters with armed guards dragging trembling technicians from their stations. Cameras rolled as she strode to the center of the studio, scar bare, eyes blazing. "My people," she began, voice shaking only slightly. "You have seen lies. You have seen chaos. Evelyn Carter and Sophie Lang want you to believe you are powerless. But I stand before you, scarred, unbroken, alive. I am Ravenport's strength, and with General Briggs I will bring order again." The broadcast poured across the city, but the response was not what she imagined. Crowds outside the studio hurled bricks, bottles, curses. Protesters lit fires at the gates, chanting Evelyn's name, chanting Sophie's. Naomi's words fell like stones into water. The ripples spread, but they drowned in fury. And then, halfway through her broadcast, every screen in the city glitched. Naomi's image froze, her mouth open mid-word. It was replaced by Sophie. Her face filled every monitor, blood spattered across her hood. "You claim to be strength," Sophie hissed, "but strength bleeds. Let me show them how." The cameras cut back to Naomi just as one of her guards collapsed, throat slit, blood spraying across the studio lights. Screams filled the air as masked figures stormed the set. Naomi shrieked into the lens, "Keep filming, don't cut, let them see me fight." The feed ended in static. Across the city, people whispered, Naomi Voss was finished. Meanwhile, Briggs was spiraling. His troops controlled the bridges and boulevards, but no longer the people. Soldiers mutinied, abandoning their posts. Civilians looted supply trucks. Fire crews refused orders, leaving entire districts to burn. Ravenport was no longer a city, it was a battlefield. Briggs raged in his bunker, smashing monitors as reports came in. "Cowards, traitors, they think they can break me? I am the wall between order and chaos." His commanders exchanged nervous glances, some whispering about abandoning him before he dragged them down. But Briggs had one plan left. "We will scorch them," he growled. "Every block that resists, we flatten it. Tanks, artillery, firebombs. Let Ravenport choke on its own ashes." It was madness, but madness was all he had left. Bridget Amelia Cross sat alone in her chambers watching the footage of Naomi's failed broadcast. For the first time in her career, she pitied Naomi, pitied the woman who had turned her scar into a crown and now wore it as a noose. Cross's revolver sat beside her drink. But instead of raising it, she lifted the envelope she had pulled days before. Evelyn had only exposed part of the truth. The rest of the files, her files, were worse. She dialed a number she hadn't dared before. Evelyn answered, her voice raw from exhaustion. "Detective Carter," Cross said, her tone steady. "You wanted the final mask? Meet me. Midnight. The cathedral ruins. Come alone. Bring the file you have. I'll bring what you don't. Together we end this." Evelyn's heart pounded. She didn't trust Cross, but she couldn't ignore her. "Midnight," Evelyn said. But Sophie was already there. The cathedral ruins, blackened from the fire years ago, echoed with dripping water and wind through shattered stained glass. Sophie crouched among the pews, blade in hand, her eyes glowing like coals in the dark. She whispered to herself, "The judge will burn, the detective will choke, and then silence." Her followers melted into the shadows, ropes and knives gleaming. Tonight would not be a meeting, it would be a reckoning. Evelyn arrived just before midnight, Ryan at her side despite her warning. The Pure Glow file was strapped beneath her coat, her pistol heavy at her hip. Cross emerged from the shadows of the altar, clutching a folder thick with papers. Her face was pale, haunted, as if she hadn't slept in weeks. "Detective," she said softly, "this city doesn't need heroes, it needs graves. But if you want truth, here it is." She held out the folder, and then the lights cut. Whispers slithered through the ruins, ropes fell from the rafters, shadows moved, Sophie's voice hissed from the dark. "The beautiful will burn, the liars will hang. Tonight the city takes its last breath before silence." Ryan raised his gun, eyes wild. Evelyn drew hers, heart racing. Cross froze, folder trembling in her hand. And from the rafters the first body fell, one of Cross's guards, hung upside down, blood dripping onto the altar. The cathedral erupted into chaos. The cathedral ruin stood like a carcass at the center of Ravenport, its spires broken, stained glass shattered, pews rotting under blackened beams. Rain trickled through holes in the roof, dripping onto the cracked marble floor in slow, uneven rhythms. The city's ghosts gathered here, whispers carried on the cold wind that slipped through the ruins. Detective Evelyn Carter knew it was a trap, but she also knew it was inevitable. Judge Amelia Cross had summoned her here with the promise of the final files, the ones Evelyn hadn't yet uncovered, the ones tying Naomi, Briggs, and Sophie together in threads of blood and ash. Files that could crush an empire or bury her alive. She had come armed, heart thudding in her chest, pistol strapped beneath her coat, the Pure Glow ledger secured against her ribs. Ryan Cole had followed despite her warning, jaw set, rifle clutched tight. He wasn't going to let her face Ravenport's wolves alone. Cross waited at the altar, her silhouette tall but fragile against the moonlight cutting through the broken roof. She held a folder so thick it seemed to pulse with secrets. "Detective," Cross said, her voice steady but hollow. "You wanted truth. Here it is, but it comes at a cost." Before Evelyn could respond, the lights died. A wave of silence fell, so heavy it crushed the air from her lungs. Then came the whispers. Dozens of them. Voices in the dark, weaving between the pillars. Sophie. Evelyn recognized her cadence instantly, soft, venomous, hypnotic. The judge wears the final mask, the detective carries the final breath, and the city, my city, will choke before the silence. The first body fell from the rafters. It was one of Cross's guards, hung upside down, throat slashed, blood dripping onto the altar like a sacrament. His eyes bulged, frozen in terror as his corpse swung slowly above the judge's head. Ryan cursed, raising his rifle. Evelyn pulled her pistol, scanning the shadows. The air smelled of iron, wet stone, and gasoline. Figures slid down ropes from the broken beams. Sophie's followers masked, knives gleaming. They moved like shadows come to life, circling Evelyn, Ryan, and Cross. Evelyn hissed to Cross, "This is your meeting?" Cross's hands shook, folder trembling. "I didn't know she would come." "Of course she would," Evelyn snapped. "You invited the devil to the altar." And then Sophie herself stepped into the moonlight. She moved like a specter, cloak dripping rain, eyes glinting beneath her hood. Blood smeared her cheek, fresh, deliberate. In her hand was a blade long and curved, gleaming wet in the dim light. She smiled, not wide, not cruel, but calm, as if everything here was exactly as it should be. "Detective Carter," Sophie said softly. "Judge Cross, and the loyal soldier. 3 masks standing before me, thinking truth will save them." She tilted her head. "Truth doesn't save, truth drowns, and tonight you all drown with it." Chaos erupted. Sophie's followers lunged, blades flashing. Evelyn fired, the gunshot deafening in the hollow ruins. One masked figure dropped, skull cracking against the marble. Ryan spun, firing bursts from his rifle, cutting down 2 more before shadows overwhelmed him. Cross screamed as a blade slashed across her arm, blood splattering across her precious folder. She clutched it desperately, unwilling to let it fall. Evelyn grabbed her shoulder, yanking her behind a pew. "Stay down!" "I can't," Cross gasped. "The files, they end it." "They'll end you first," Evelyn snapped, firing another shot. Sophie didn't flinch as her followers fell. She moved with inhuman precision, blades slicing throats, bodies collapsing in silence. She danced among them, each kill a whisper, each step a hymn. She whispered as she cut, "On the beautiful will burn, the liars will hang, the judge will bleed, the detective will choke." Evelyn lunged from behind cover, firing directly at Sophie. The bullet whizzed past, clipping her hood, tearing fabric. Sophie didn't stop. She only smiled wider, as if the miss had been inevitable. "You can't kill me, Carter," she said softly. "I am not flesh. I am not bone. I am silence." Ryan roared, tackling one of Sophie's men, slamming his head into the pew until bone cracked. But 3 more swarmed him, knives flashing. Ryan fought like a cornered wolf, but blood sprayed as blades bit into his side. "Ryan!" Evelyn screamed, trying to break through, but Sophie's blade intercepted her, steel catching moonlight inches from her throat. Sophie leaned close, their eyes locking. "He bleeds for you. But will you bleed for him?" Evelyn shoved back, pistol raised, but Sophie vanished into the shadows, reappearing behind Cross. The judge froze, folder clutched tight. Sophie's blade pressed against her throat, drawing a bead of crimson. "Give me the files," Sophie whispered. "They are not yours. They are not hers. They are mine. I was born from them. I am their prophecy." Cross trembled. "If you kill me, you kill your proof." Sophie smiled. "I don't need proof. I am proof." Gunfire ripped through the cathedral, not from Evelyn, not from Ryan, from outside. The front doors exploded inward as Briggs's soldiers stormed the ruins. Floodlights pierced the dark, blinding everyone inside. Automatic rifles roared, mowing down Sophie's followers where they stood. Blood sprayed across pews, pooling in puddles that reflected the light like glass. Briggs himself entered, face twisted in rage, pistol raised. "Enough games!" he bellowed. "The city will kneel!" His eyes locked on Evelyn, then on Cross, then on Sophie. He grinned. "All of you, on your knees." But Sophie didn't kneel. She laughed, a low, chilling laugh that echoed off the broken stained glass, weaving through the gunfire and screams. "You think you control this city, General?" she hissed. "You think your guns silence me?" She raised her blade high, and from the rafters above, dozens more bodies dropped. Briggs's own soldiers, strangled, throats cut, hung upside down. The cathedral filled with death, and for the first time, Briggs faltered. Evelyn seized the moment. She dove for Cross, ripping the folder from her bloodied hands. Cross screamed in protest, but Evelyn shoved her behind cover. Ryan crawled to her side, bleeding, face pale. Ev, we need to run. But Evelyn didn't run. She opened the folder. Inside were photographs, ledgers, testimonies, evidence of everything. Naomi's orders, Briggs's murders, Cross's cover-ups, Sophie's origins, the entire rotten heart of Ravenport laid bare on paper. Her hands shook as she flipped page after page. "This is it," she whispered. "The whole city. The whole city will see." Sophie's eyes locked on her, fury igniting for the first time. "Those are mine," she hissed. "They are my birthright." She lunged. Evelyn raised her pistol. Briggs raised his. Ryan did too, weak but steady. For a split second, time froze. 3 guns, 1 blade, 1 folder of truth, and the cathedral held its breath. The cathedral erupted. Gunfire cracked like thunder. Sophie's blade flashed like lightning. Screams rose, echoed, and died in the rotting rafters. Evelyn Carter crouched behind a shattered pew, folder of files clutched tight to her chest as if it were her own heartbeat. Rain hammered the broken roof above, mingling with the spray of blood across the marble floor. Ryan Cole struggled beside her, pale and bleeding, rifle shaking in his hands. "Ev," he gasped, "we can't hold this." She didn't answer. Her eyes darted between Sophie and Briggs. 2 storms colliding, their war ripping Ravenport apart. Briggs's soldiers had turned the cathedral into a slaughterhouse. They fired indiscriminately, mowing down Sophie's followers, riddling stone pillars with bullet holes, splintering pews into shrapnel. But Sophie was untouchable. She moved through the chaos like smoke, blades slicing throats, knives spinning from her hands with surgical precision. Bodies fell in her wake, soldiers, followers, anyone who crossed her path. And all the while she whispered, "The judge will bleed, the detective will choke, the general will burn, and the city will take its last breath before silence." Judge Amelia Cross clutched her slashed arm, eyes wide, breath ragged. Her revolver lay discarded, useless as the weight of her sins bore down on her. "This is my fault," she muttered, trembling. "All of it. I signed the orders, I buried the evidence, I gave them the rope and watched them hang." Evelyn grabbed her by the collar, yanking her into cover. "Not now, you want redemption, survive." But Cross shook her head violently, blood running down her sleeve. "Redemption isn't survival, redemption is confession." "And I will confess." Before Evelyn could stop her, Cross stumbled into the open folder clutched in one hand, blood dripping from the other. She raised the papers high, voice cracking but loud enough to cut through the gunfire. "Ravenport," she cried, "hear me. I am your judge, and I am guilty." The cathedral fell into stunned silence for a breath, even Sophie pausing mid-strike. Cross's voice echoed against the stone. "Naomi Voss, General Briggs, I signed their lies, I silenced your cries. Sophie Lang is not your savior, she is their shadow, their creation, and I—" A gunshot split the air. Cross jerked, blood blooming across her chest. She collapsed onto the marble, folder scattering across the floor, papers fluttering like broken wings. Briggs lowered his smoking pistol, eyes cold. "One less traitor," he muttered. "One step closer to silence." Evelyn's scream tore from her throat, raw and primal. She lunged, dragging the scattered papers back toward cover. Ryan fired bursts to cover her, every bullet tearing his strength further. But Sophie moved faster. She pounced on the altar, blade raised, and with one sweeping slash, she cut down 3 of Briggs's soldiers at once. Blood sprayed across the crucifix like fresh paint. Her eyes burned as they locked on Briggs. "You kill judges," Sophie hissed. "I kill kings." And then the cathedral doors blew open again. This time, it wasn't soldiers. It was Naomi Voss. She was drenched in rain, makeup ruined, hair wild. But her eyes, Her eyes burned with the fire of a queen clawing her way back to her throne. Behind her strode a cadre of private guards, men dressed in black, armored, faces hidden. They raised rifles not at Sophie, not at Evelyn, but at Briggs. Naomi stepped forward, scar catching the light, lips curling into a sneer. "General," she said, voice echoing across the ruins, "you wanted silence? Let me give you mine." She raised her hand. Her guards opened fire. Briggs's men fell in heaps, bullets shredding their armor, blood slicking the marble. The cathedral became a crossfire furnace. Briggs's soldiers firing back, Sophie's followers attacking from the shadows, Naomi's guards cutting through both. Naomi walked through the chaos as if it parted for her, heels clicking on stone, eyes locked on Evelyn. "You," Naomi spat, "you did this. You think exposing me makes you righteous?" "No, detective. It makes you mine." Evelyn leveled her pistol at her. "Step closer and I put you down." Naomi laughed, low and cold. "You can't shoot me. You need me. Without me, your files are just paper. With me, they are fire." Briggs roared over the gunfire, blood spattering his uniform. He raised his radio, screaming into it, "Bring the fire! Level this block! I don't care who's inside! Burn it to ash!" Evelyn's blood ran cold. He wasn't bluffing. Briggs had artillery waiting. If they fired, the cathedral and everyone inside it would be obliterated. She scrambled for her radio, shouting into it, "This is Carter. He's about to torch the city. Shut it down now." But the only answer was static. Briggs grinned, teeth red with blood. Too late. Ravenport chokes tonight. Sophie leapt from the altar, landing inches from Evelyn, her blade slashed, sparks flying as it scraped against Evelyn's pistol. Evelyn fired, the shot grazing Sophie's hood, but the woman didn't stop. "You don't understand, detective," Sophie whispered, pressing the blade against Evelyn's cheek. "I am not your enemy. I am your ending. You cannot kill me because I am already dead." Ryan, bleeding and gasping, dragged himself forward. "Ev, get down!" He fired his rifle. The bullet tore through Sophie's shoulder, spinning her back. She hissed, stumbling but not falling, blood soaking her cloak. Her followers shrieked from the shadows, rushing to her side. Evelyn pulled Ryan against her, fury burning in her chest. "You'll live. You hear me? You'll live." But even as she said it, she saw his eyes dimming. Naomi strode closer, pistol now in her hand. Her guards pressed forward, gunning down both Sophie's followers and Briggs's soldiers. She looked like a queen walking through her coronation of corpses. "Detective," Naomi said smoothly, "give me the folder. Let me burn the judge's last words myself. Together we crush Sophie. Together we bury Briggs, and together we rule Ravenport." Evelyn stared at her, disgust twisting in her gut. "Rule? You think this is about ruling? This city is bleeding to death." Naomi tilted her head. "Then let me cauterize the wound." Briggs's laugh thundered across the cathedral. He stood on the altar, radio raised, his surviving soldiers fanning out around him. "You think any of you walk out alive?" he snarled. "Artillery's locked. 5 minutes. You'll all be bones." He looked straight at Evelyn. "And I'll hang your skull on the wall." The storm reached its crescendo. Sophie bled but stood, eyes blazing, blade raised for the kill. Naomi leveled her pistol, folder in Evelyn's hands, her prize. Briggs barked into his radio, seconds from unleashing hellfire. Ryan slumped, blood pooling beneath him. Judge Cross's corpse lay at the altar, her confession silenced forever. And Evelyn Carter, folder clutched to her chest, realized the truth. No matter who she sided with, no matter whose mask shattered, Ravenport would drown. Unless she made the one choice none of them expected. She whispered to herself, almost a prayer, not silence. Not yet. And then she raised the folder high, ready to burn every mask at once. The cathedral groaned as if it were alive, its broken bones creaking under the storm of bullets and screams. The marble floor was slick with blood, the pews reduced to splinters, the crucifix above the altar blackened with gunpowder and fire. Evelyn Carter stood at the heart of it all, folder of truth clutched tight against her chest. Her lungs burned from smoke, her ears rang with gunfire, but her mind was sharper than it had ever been. Around her, the titans of Ravenport waged their war. Naomi Voss, bloodied, scarred, yet radiant with venomous power, strode across the floor with her guards, pistol aimed at Evelyn's heart. General Marcus Briggs, uniform shredded, face slick with blood and fury, barked into his radio, artillery seconds away from turning the cathedral into rubble. And Sophie Lang, the Wraith, the Phantom, the creation of pure glow, stood half in shadow, her blade dripping, her body bloodied but unbroken, her smile carved into something beyond human. 3 predators, 1 city's soul, and Evelyn caught between them, heartbeats sinking with the rain hammering the ruined roof. "Give me the folder, Carter," Naomi demanded, her pistol steady despite the chaos. "With it I erase this city's sins. With it I become its cure." "You're no cure," Evelyn spat, her voice raw. "You're the disease. Pure Glow was your empire. Sophie is your child, and every corpse in this cathedral belongs to you." Naomi's lips curled. "History belongs to the victors. Don't make the mistake of siding with ghosts." Her eyes flicked to Sophie with disdain. "She was my shadow, my blade in the dark. But shadows are meant to vanish when the light shines." Sophie tilted her head, smile widening. "And what happens, Naomi, when the light dies?" She moved like smoke, vanishing from sight, her laughter trailing behind. Briggs slammed his boot against the altar, roaring into his radio. "Artillery, fire now, level the block, erase them all." The radio crackled back. "Confirm, our men are still inside." "I said fire," Briggs bellowed. "Burn Ravenport clean." Evelyn's blood froze. She lunged from cover, pistol raised. "Briggs, stop, you'll kill thousands." His eyes locked on her, cold and merciless. Better thousands die in silence than millions drown in chaos. He raised his sidearm, aiming at her head. And then Sophie struck. She dropped from the rafters like a vulture, blade slicing across Briggs's arm. His pistol flew from his grip, clattering across the marble. Briggs roared in pain, swinging his other fist, but Sophie moved too fast. She slashed again, blade carving deep into his side. Blood poured across his uniform, staining his medals. "You call yourself a general," Sophie whispered, circling him like a predator. "But you're just another mask, and masks break." Briggs lunged, tackling her into the altar. Wood splintered, stone cracked, their bodies colliding with a sound like thunder. Sophie's blade flashed, Briggs's fist hammered, blood sprayed in every direction. The cathedral shook with their duel, beast against phantom. Naomi seized her chance. She strode forward, pistol locked on Evelyn. "This ends now, detective. Hand me the files or I paint this floor with your blood." Ryan, half conscious, dragged himself up behind Evelyn. His rifle was gone, his body broken, but his voice rasped strong. "Ev, don't trust her." Naomi's sneer deepened. "He's dying. You can save him if you give me the folder." Evelyn's jaw clenched. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from fury. "You want it?" she hissed. "Then take it." She hurled the folder into the air. Pages scattered like feathers, fluttering across the cathedral, evidence raining down on blood and fire. Naomi's eyes widened. She lunged after them, clawing at the papers, desperate to seize her empire's last chance at survival. Evelyn raised her pistol. Naomi froze, realizing too late she'd walked into the sights. But before Evelyn could fire, Sophie's laughter cut through the storm. Sophie burst free of Briggs's grasp, blade plunging deep into his chest. The general's roar died in his throat. His eyes widened, blood bubbling at his lips. He staggered, disbelief etched into his face. "No," he rasped. "I am Ravenport." Sophie twisted the blade and Briggs collapsed against the altar, his body sliding lifeless to the floor. His radio slipped from his grip, static hissing. The cathedral held its breath. Naomi, Evelyn, Ryan all froze as Sophie stood tall, blood dripping from her blade, eyes alight with feral triumph. She had killed the general. She had broken the mask. But Sophie wasn't finished. She bent, lifting Briggs's radio with bloodied fingers. She raised it to her lips, voice low and haunting. "This is General Briggs, fire." The voice recognition locked. The order was accepted, and from the distance thunder answered. The first shell screamed through the night sky. The cathedral shook as the explosion tore through its western wall. Fire ripped across the pews, stone shattered, bodies flung into the air. Screams echoed as the roof groaned, chunks collapsing. Evelyn was thrown against the floor, her pistol skittering away. Ryan shielded her with his battered body, taking the brunt of falling debris. Naomi's guards were obliterated in the blast, bodies torn apart, flames devouring what remained. Naomi herself was hurled against the crucifix, blood gushing from her temple. Through the smoke and fire, Sophie stood untouched, her cloak whipping in the storm, her smile wider than ever. "This is silence," she whispered. "This is the last breath." Evelyn crawled to Ryan, shaking him. "Stay with me! Don't you dare leave me!" His eyes fluttered, blood spilling from his mouth. "Ev, you have to finish it." "No," she snapped, tears streaking her ash-covered face. "We finish it together." But his hand slipped from hers, limp as his chest stilled. Evelyn's scream ripped through the inferno, echoing louder than the shells tearing the cathedral apart. Naomi staggered to her feet, blood pouring down her face, pistol still clutched in her hand. Her empire lay in ruins, her guards dead, her lies scattered across the floor, her rival Briggs butchered at the altar. But still, she would not fall. She leveled her pistol at Sophie, eyes blazing. "You're nothing without me. You're my shadow, and shadows die when queens burn." Sophie tilted her head, smile sharp as her blade. "Then burn!" She hurled Briggs's radio at Naomi. The device exploded in flames mid-air, showering sparks. Naomi shrieked as fire caught her cloak, her body igniting. She stumbled, clawing at the flames, her screams piercing the night. Evelyn watched in horror as Naomi collapsed, consumed by fire, her crown of lies burning with her. The queen was dead. That left two, Evelyn and Sophie, detective and phantom, truth and silence. They faced each other across the flaming ruins, corpses and papers littered between them. Sophie's eyes glowed in the firelight, her blade dripping. "This city belongs to me now. You can either vanish with it, or choke beneath me." Evelyn raised her pistol steady despite the blood, despite the fire, despite the loss tearing her apart. "You're wrong," she said, her voice steady as steel. "This city doesn't belong to you, or Naomi, or Briggs. It belongs to every soul you drowned, every voice you silenced, and tonight, they speak through me." Sophie's smile faltered for the first time, and Evelyn fired. The bullet ripped through Sophie's chest. Her eyes widened, shock flashing across her face. She staggered, blade slipping from her hand, blood spilling across the marble. She looked at Evelyn, lips parting, whispering one final phrase. Silence always wins. And then she collapsed into the fire. And the cathedral burned. Shells continued to fall, walls crumbling, roof collapsing. Evelyn staggered through the inferno, clutching the surviving files, her lungs filled with smoke, her heart heavy with grief. Behind her lay Naomi's charred corpse, Briggs's broken body, Sophie's smoldering remains, and Ryan's lifeless form. Every mask shattered, every lie exposed, but at what cost? As she stumbled into the night, flames devouring the cathedral behind her, Evelyn whispered the words that would haunt her forever. This was never silence. This was the scream before it. And Ravenport, drowning in fire, finally listened. The cathedral was gone. By dawn, it was nothing more than a blackened skeleton jutting against a bruised sky. Smoke coiled upward in greasy tendrils, blotting out the rising sun, carrying with it the stench of charred wood, scorched stone, and roasted flesh. The bells that once tolled judgment now hung shattered, melted bronze fused into rubble. Ravenport stood still in the silence, as if the entire city had drawn one long, horrified breath and forgotten how to exhale. Detective Evelyn Carter stumbled from the ruins hours earlier. Her clothes burned, her hands black with soot, her throat raw from smoke. Her eyes stung not from the ash, but from the memories seared into her vision. Ryan's body crumpled beneath falling debris. Judge Cross bleeding confession across the altar. Naomi shrieking as fire devoured her crown. Briggs falling, blade buried in his chest. Sophie smiling through the flames, whispering her final curse. They were all gone. Every mask had shattered. And yet their shadows clung to her, whispering in her ears, choking her lungs. She stood now in the middle of Hollow Street, across from the smoldering cathedral. Police lines had been set up hastily, yellow tape fluttering uselessly in the wind. Officers stood pale-faced, hollow-eyed, unwilling to step closer, as if the ruins might still reach out and drag them in. Evelyn ignored them all. She clutched the singed folder of files against her chest like scripture, the last fragile pieces of the truth she had fought and bled to unearth. But the truth was heavier than she had ever imagined. By mid-morning, the city began to stir. Civilians crept from their homes, drawn by the smoke, by the silence, by the whispers. They gathered in clusters along the barricades, staring at the blackened ruin with wide eyes, murmuring like mourners at a funeral. "What happened?" one man asked, voice trembling. "Some kind of bombing," another muttered. "No," whispered an old woman, her eyes sharp despite her age. "It was a reckoning." Rumors spread like fire that the cathedral had been bombed by foreign enemies, that Naomi Voss had staged her own death and fled into the night, that General Briggs had been executed for treason, that Sophie Lang was still alive, her hooded ghost stalking the ashes. No one knew the truth, and Evelyn couldn't yet bring herself to tell them, because what good was truth when all it left behind was rubble? Captain Hayes, soot-streaked and exhausted, found Evelyn leaning against a lamppost, staring into the ruins. His voice was hoarse, but his authority was intact. "Carter, you need to be in the hospital." She shook her head slowly. "No hospital can fix this. You're injured. We're all injured." Her eyes flicked to him, sharp as glass. "Don't talk to me about bandages when the city's bleeding out in the streets." Hayes sighed, rubbing a trembling hand across his face. "The mayor wants answers. The press is already circling. They're calling it a terrorist attack. Evelyn let out a hollow laugh. Terrorist attack? That's neat, simple, easy to swallow. And false, Hayes admitted quietly. But maybe it's better this way. Evelyn pushed off the lamppost, eyes blazing despite her exhaustion. Better for who? For Naomi, so her empire of lies stays buried? For Briggs, so his massacre wears a flag instead of a mask? For Sophie, so her name becomes legend instead of horror? Her voice broke, the folder trembling in her hands. Better for Ryan? For Cross? For everyone who burned in there? Hayes had no answer. Evelyn walked past him toward the barricades, toward the crowd. People parted as she approached, their whispers fading into silence. She looked like a ghost herself, clothes burned, face streaked with soot, eyes hollow but burning with something fiercer than life. She climbed onto the hood of an abandoned car, folder in one hand, and faced them all. This, she shouted, her voice cutting through the morning air, was not an attack from outside. This was an attack from within. From the heart of Ravenport itself. The crowd stiffened, murmurs rippling like a wave. You've been lied to, Evelyn continued, by those sworn to protect you, by those who claimed to heal you, by those who hid behind uniforms, behind crowns, behind masks. Naomi Voss, General Briggs, Judge Cross, Sophie Lang, all of them were part of the same disease that has been rotting this city from the inside out. She held up the scorched folder, its papers fluttering weakly in the breeze. And this is the proof. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Hayes surged forward. Carter, think about what you're doing. But Evelyn ignored him. Do you want silence? She demanded. Or do you want the truth? For a long, terrible moment, no one answered. The city seemed to hold its breath again. And then, from the crowd, a voice rose, a child's voice, trembling but clear. The truth. Others joined in louder, fiercer. The truth! The truth! The chant spread like fire until the whole street was roaring. The truth! Evelyn's throat tightened. For the first time in what felt like years, she let herself believe. Maybe, just maybe, the city was ready. But as the chants rose, a figure watched from the shadow of a burned-out alley. A hooded figure, her shoulders still bandaged, her eyes still burning. Sophie Lang had survived, and as Evelyn raised the folder high, Sophie whispered to herself, her voice lost in the chants. Truth is just another mask. The chants did not fade when Evelyn stepped down from the car hood. They grew louder, rolling like thunder down the fractured streets of Ravenport. People who had once whispered in fear now shouted in rage. The truth! The truth! For years, silence had been their prison. Naomi's beauty empire had promised perfection but fed them poison. Briggs had wrapped their throats in chains of order, calling bloodshed peace. Judge Cross had turned justice into a marketplace, and Sophie Lang, born from those lies, had dragged them into the abyss of slaughter. Now their names were spoken like curses. By noon, Ravenport boiled. Crowds swelled outside Pure Glow headquarters, hurling bricks and bottles at its mirrored facade. Protesters stormed government buildings, dragging portraits of Briggs and Cross into the streets to burn them. Fires erupted in the markets. Police clashed with civilians. Sirens howled without end. It was not revolution. It was reckoning. Evelyn moved through it like a shadow, the scorched folder clutched under her arm. Every step she took, she felt Ryan's ghost beside her, whispering warnings. She imagined his voice whenever doubt threatened to drag her under. Don't stop now, Ev. Don't choke when the city finally breathes. So she pushed forward. At the crumbling newsroom of the Ravenport Gazette, Evelyn slammed the folder onto the editor's desk. "You want your headlines?" she rasped. "Print this. Every page, every lie, every name." The editor, a weary man with nicotine-stained fingers, flipped through the charred documents with trembling hands. His face paled as he read Naomi's signature, Briggs's orders, Cross's payoffs. "This is..." His voice failed. "This is enough to bury half the city." "Then bury it," Evelyn snapped. He looked up at her, fear etched into his features. "If I publish this, I'll be dead by morning." Evelyn leaned across the desk, eyes like fire. "Then die standing." For a long moment, silence held. Then the editor nodded, pushing his trembling hand toward the phone. "Get me the presses now." By evening, the first papers hit the streets. Pure Glow funded illegal human experiments. General Briggs ordered mass executions. Judge Cross sold verdicts to criminal empire. Headlines screamed from every corner. Citizens devoured the stories, waving the pages in fury, shoving them into the faces of officers, stapling them to the burned-out walls. The city convulsed. At the Pure Glow labs, workers smashed windows and looted supplies. At the military barracks, soldiers mutinied against their commanders. At the courthouse, protesters dragged the Scales of Justice statue into the gutter and set it aflame. Ravenport was eating its own heart. Evelyn watched from the rooftop of a gutted building, smoke curling around her. She should have felt victory. She had given them the truth, torn away the masks. But her chest was heavy, her stomach hollow. Because victory didn't look like this. Victory wasn't fire and broken glass. Victory wasn't the wail of mothers carrying their children away from riots, or the crack of gunfire as looters clashed in the alleys. She turned the last unburned page in her folder. Ryan's blood smudged on the margin. Truth was supposed to free them, so why did it feel like chains tightening around everyone's throat? That night in the chaos, survivors crawled from the fire. First came whispers of Judge Amelia Cross. They said she had been seen stumbling from the cathedral ruins, half burned, half blind, dragged by loyalists into hiding. Some claimed she sought asylum with rival gangs. Others whispered she was bargaining with foreign powers, trading secrets for protection. Then came word of Naomi Voss's body. Fire crews claimed they found her corpse among the ashes, burned beyond recognition. But others swore they saw her slipping into the underground tunnels, her face wrapped in bandages, her eyes still burning. And then there was Sophie. Always Sophie. At first, just rumors. A woman in a hood spotted near the river docks. A masked figure whispering in the alleys. A laugh carried on the smoke. But by midnight, the rumors became undeniable. A video surfaced, grainy, shaky, captured on a smuggled phone. It showed Sophie standing atop a police car, blade glinting, fire behind her. Her hood was down, her face bloodied but alive. She raised her hands and a crowd of masked followers roared in devotion. "Naomi burned," Sophie declared in the video, her voice steady, sharp. "Briggs fell. Cross crawls like a rat. The detective waves her papers like a savior. But truth is fragile. Truth crumbles in fire. I am not truth. I am forever." The video ended in static. But the city had seen enough. The phantom was still alive. Evelyn sat in her safe house, the flicker of a dying candle illuminating the cracked walls. The video replayed on Ryan's old laptop. Sophie's face freezing mid-speech. Evelyn's chest tightened, rage mixing with grief. Rowan's voice crackled from the old radio on the table as if answering her thoughts. "Do you hear her, Carter? The ghost walks still. You burn the masks, but she wears them all. The city chants for truth, but she whispers forever. Tell me, detective, did you win anything at all? Evelyn slammed the radio off, jaw clenched. She looked at the folder, nearly empty now, its pages scattered across printing presses and newsrooms. Only one section remained sealed in an envelope. Ryan had hidden it. Ryan had begged her to wait before releasing it. Her fingers brushed the envelope's edge. What was in it? What secret had he guarded even from her? For the first time in days, Evelyn felt fear, not of Sophie, not of Naomi, not of the city, but of the paper in her own hands. Outside, Ravenport boiled. Masked gangs roamed the streets, claiming Sophie's name as their banner. Protesters battled soldiers who no longer knew whose orders to follow. Fires burned unchecked, sirens wailed endlessly, and yet in the alleys children played with scraps of newspaper, chanting the truth, as if it were a game. The city Evelyn had sworn to protect was devouring itself. And in the shadows, Sophie smiled. The candle in Evelyn's safe house guttered, choking on its last wax. Its dying light painted shadows across the cracked walls, shadows that seemed to move when she wasn't looking. On the table before her lay the sealed envelope. Ryan's handwriting stretched across it, jagged from urgency but still unmistakable. Not yet. Only if I fall. He had hidden it from her during the investigation, clutching it close even as the cathedral burned. He hadn't wanted her to see it until the worst had happened. And the worst had happened. Her fingers hovered over the seal. She thought of his voice, of the way he had shielded her in the cathedral's collapse, of the blood that had stained his lips when he whispered, "Finish it." Her thumb tore the paper. Inside were only a few sheets, edges singed, but their contents were a knife sharper than any Sophie carried. Ryan had uncovered a ledger, a hidden account tying Naomi and Briggs not only to the experiments but to foreign money, massive transfers, hidden beneath false corporations, a shadow empire not contained within Ravenport at all. The names on the accounts chilled her blood. Politicians, business magnates, foreign generals. This wasn't just Ravenport's rot. This was the root of something larger, deeper, international. Pure Glow wasn't merely a vanity empire. It had been a gateway. The cathedral wasn't the heart of the disease. It was a single tumor in a body riddled with them. Ryan had known. He had died for it. Evelyn pressed her fists against her eyes, fury and despair twisting in her gut. How do you fight a monster when its veins run through the entire world? Her radio crackled to life. Hayes's voice bled through, tense and sharp. "Carter, we've got a situation. Rioters are breaking into the port. Armed gangs, they're chanting her name." Evelyn froze. "Sophie." "Yeah," Hayes spat. "Your ghost. She's rallying them like she's their savior. We've got reports she executed a police captain on camera. The footage is everywhere." The radio hissed. Evelyn heard gunfire, shouting, then Hayes's voice again, raw with frustration. "I can't hold this city together, Carter. You wanted truth? Well, it's tearing us apart." The line went dead. By midnight, Sophie's phantom army prowled the streets. They weren't soldiers. They weren't even organized. They were the broken, the lost, the angry, the city's discarded shadows. They donned masks of their own, scraps of cloth, painted skulls, torn bandages. They carried knives, bats, stolen guns. And at their center, always just far enough to blur on the recordings, stood Sophie. She never screamed, never raged. She whispered, and they obeyed. "Burn the courthouses. Take the barracks. Drag the uniforms into the gutters." Every command spread like plague through her followers, executed with feverish devotion. Meanwhile, Evelyn discovered betrayal. When she returned to the Gazette to check the next day's edition, she found the presses cold. The editor's chair sat empty, still warm. A bloodstain marked the floor beneath it. Pinned to the press with a knife was a note, scrawled in crimson strokes. Truth dies faster than silence. SL. Evelyn ripped it free, her hands trembling. But worse than Sophie's taunt was the second note she found tucked under the typewriter. This one was from Hayes. Evelyn, don't look for me. Don't trust me. Not anymore. If you see my face again, shoot first. Her chest hollowed out. Hayes, the man who had once pulled her from a back alley when she was bleeding out on her first case, who had shielded her when Briggs threatened to court-martial her, who had told her again and again she was the city's last honest soul. Gone, or worse, turned. She staggered into the night, clutching the two notes. Betrayal burned colder than Sophie's blade. The city groaned like a dying beast. Ravenport's skyline flickered with firelight, its alleys thick with chants and screams. Police barricades collapsed beneath the surge of masked mobs. Armored trucks burned in the squares. From every corner, rumors echoed. Naomi alive, her face wrapped in silk, promising rebirth from the ashes. Cross-striking deals in secret, offering names to anyone who could buy her survival. Sophie seen walking the river at dawn, her reflection trailing like a second ghost. And now Hayes, her only remaining ally, gone. Evelyn stumbled through it all, clutching Ryan's envelope, her mind splitting between fury and exhaustion. What had she unleashed? She had thought tearing the masks away would free Ravenport. Instead, she had given the city to the shadows, and the shadows belonged to Sophie. Near dawn, Evelyn found herself back at the cathedral's ruin. The smoke had thinned, leaving only black stone and the faint smell of death. The crucifix still stood, cracked and scorched, but unbroken. She collapsed at its base, the envelope falling from her grasp. "I did what you asked, Ryan," she whispered. "I finished it. But finishing it feels like ending everything." Her voice cracked, raw. "Tell me what to do, please." Only silence answered. But in that silence, Evelyn swore she heard it, the faintest sound, soft as a sigh. Laughter. Sophie's laughter carried on the wind. Evelyn rose, fists clenched, tears cutting clean lines down her soot-stained face. If Sophie wanted an army, Evelyn would give her war. If Naomi lived, she would drag her into the light. If Hayes had turned, she would have put him in the ground. And if the ledger's names meant the rot stretched beyond Ravenport, then Evelyn Carter would tear the world apart one mask at a time until nothing remained but truth. She picked up the envelope, pressed it against her chest, and whispered the words Ryan never got to hear. "I won't choke, not now, not ever." Behind her, the sun broke over Ravenport, blood-red and merciless. And somewhere in the city's shadows, Sophie smiled, her blade gleaming as if it had tasted the dawn. But the city did not sleep, not anymore. For 3 nights, Ravenport had burned, and on the 4th morning the smoke still clung to the streets like a second skin. Buildings stood hollow-eyed, their windows shattered, their walls painted with graffiti and blood. Sirens wailed until their batteries died. Dogs roamed the alleys, gnawing on scraps of food or flesh. And through it all, the chanting never ceased. Sometimes it was the truth, shouted by civilians clutching Evelyn's headlines. Other times it was forever, forever, screamed by Sophie's masked followers as they set fire to another precinct. The city had been split clean down the middle. Those who believed Evelyn's truth would heal them, and those who believed Sophie's lies were all they had left. Evelyn Carter moved through the ruins like a ghost. Her coat was torn, her skin bruised, her eyes ringed with shadows, but her grip on the envelope, Ryan's last secret, never wavered. She had no squad, no backup, no haze, just the truth. And the truth had teeth. By mid-morning, she stood at the edge of Ravenport's port. The docks stretched out like skeleton fingers into the bay, ships abandoned, warehouses gutted. Smoke drifted across the water, staining the horizon. And there, at the heart of the chaos, Sophie Lang's army gathered. Hundreds of them, some carried stolen rifles, others gripped kitchen knives, crowbars, chains. Every one of them wore a mask, cloth, porcelain, painted wood, each a fragment of the phantom Sophie had been. At the center, upon a crate marked Pure Glow, Sophie stood. Her hood was gone. Her face was bare, scarred, bloodied, radiant with fury. Her voice carried over the mob like a hymn. "They gave you silence," she shouted. "I give you fire," the mob roared. "They gave you masks," she cried. "I give you your faces back." The mob screamed louder, stamping their feet, raising their weapons. Evelyn's stomach clenched. She had seen rallies before, military drills, political speeches, but this was worship. Sophie was no longer just a killer. She was a messiah of shadows. Evelyn raised her radio. "Rowan, are you in position?" Static hissed. Then the priest's rasp. "I stand where God no longer does." The cathedral burned, but his judgment did not. "Are you ready, detective?" "No," Evelyn admitted, "but I'll move anyway." She cut the line and stepped into the open. The mob noticed her instantly. Heads turned, weapons lifted, masks tilted. Evelyn raised both hands, the envelope still clutched in one. Her voice was hoarse but sharp as broken glass. "Sophie!" she shouted. "You wanted forever? Then face me, alone." The mob snarled, shifting like a wave. But Sophie lifted her hand, and silence crashed down. She looked at Evelyn, eyes gleaming with recognition, with hatred, with something almost like affection. "You survived the fire," Sophie said softly. Her voice carried across the dock without effort, like the city itself wanted to hear her. "So did you," Evelyn answered. "Of course I did. Fire doesn't kill what it creates." Sophie tilted her head, smiling faintly. "You've given them truth, detective, but truth is fragile. Look at them. Do they look free? Or do they look hungry for something stronger?" Evelyn's throat tightened. "You've turned them into monsters." "No," Sophie spread her arms. "I've turned them into believers." The standoff stretched, the air sharp with tension. Evelyn opened the envelope, pulling out the ledger pages. She held them high, her voice ringing with every ounce of strength left in her. Naomi's money, Briggs's blood, Cross's deals. It wasn't just Ravenport, it was bigger. Foreign governments, corporations, a network so deep it makes Sophie's army look like children with knives. "This is the truth," gasps rippled through the mob. Masks turned toward one another. Murmurs spread. Sophie's smile faltered for the first time, but only for a moment. She laughed, a low, rich laugh that crawled across the dock like smoke. "And what will you do with it, Evelyn? Expose them, tear them down, burn the whole world because you couldn't save your partner in one city?" Her words sliced into Evelyn like blades. Ryan's ghost pressed close, but his voice was silent now. Evelyn gritted her teeth. "I'll do what I've always done. I'll finish it." The mob split as Sophie stepped down from her crate, knives scraping against wood. She moved slowly, deliberately, her eyes never leaving Evelyn's. "Then finish it with me," Sophie whispered. "No masks, no armies, just us." The mob howled in approval, retreating into a circle. forming an arena of fire and steel around the two women. Evelyn's hand tightened on her pistol. Sophie's fingers brushed the hilt of her blade. The city of Ravenport held its breath. And somewhere in the distance, Rowan's voice whispered from the radio Evelyn had forgotten to switch off. The last breath comes before the silence. The circle tightened. Torches burned in the fists of Sophie's followers, flames bending in the wind, their light painting the dock in fevered orange. The mob whispered and muttered, their voices rising and falling like a tide. Some chanted Sophie's name, others murmured Evelyn's. But most were silent, waiting. Sophie moved first. Her knife glinted in the firelight, its serrated edge still dark from the cathedral blood. She twirled it once, casually, like an artist preparing her brush. "Tell me something, detective," Sophie said, voice soft enough to force Evelyn to lean into it. "When Ryan died, did he whisper your name? Or mine?" The words stabbed deeper than the knife ever could. Evelyn's grip on her pistol wavered. Ryan's last breath had been finish it, but even now, even in this fire-lit circle, doubt gnawed. "He whispered the truth," Evelyn answered, forcing her voice steady. Sophie's smile was sharp. "Then let the truth bleed." She lunged. The first clash was thunder. Steel shrieked against steel as Evelyn's pistol met Sophie's blade in a desperate block. Sparks burst, scattering across the dock. Sophie pressed hard, her face inches from Evelyn's, her eyes wild and shining. "You're trembling," Sophie hissed. Evelyn shoved her back, firing a shot. The bullet grazed Sophie's arm, tearing flesh, but Sophie barely flinched. She spun, blade flashing, cutting across Evelyn's coat. The mob roared, the circle pulsing with bloodlust. Evelyn ducked another slash, rolled, came up firing again. The shot shattered a torch, plunging part of the ring into darkness. Sophie laughed, wild and terrible. "You can't kill me, Carter. I am every mask they ever wore. Even if you cut me down, they'll wear me forever." Her blade slashed again, this time cutting into Evelyn's shoulder. Hot blood spilled down her arm, burning in the cold night. Evelyn staggered but didn't fall. She raised her pistol, aimed squarely at Sophie's chest. "Then I'll burn the mask, and everything under it." Her finger tightened on the trigger. The gun clicked empty. Evelyn's stomach dropped. Sophie's laugh tore through the dock, louder than the mob's cheers. She lunged again, her blade a streak of silver death. Evelyn barely managed to block with the pistol's frame, sparks flying as steel bit metal. The weapon snapped in half, clattering uselessly to the wood. Now she was unarmed. The mob screamed for blood. Sophie circled her, knife dripping red, smile fixed and cruel. "Do you feel it, Carter? The silence waiting for you? The last breath hanging in your throat?" Evelyn's chest heaved. Pain throbbed through her shoulder. Her hands bled from the broken pistol. But her eyes burned. "Then take it from me!" Evelyn spat. The mob howled approval. Sophie lunged again. Evelyn sidestepped, grabbed a length of chain from the dock and swung. The metal whipped across Sophie's face, splitting her cheek open. Sophie snarled, stumbled, then came back harder, faster, more vicious. The fight became a storm, steel against chain, blood against blood, breath against breath. Every strike echoed like thunder, every gasp like lightning. The mob's chants rose higher, torn between devotion and frenzy. Some cried, "Sophie, Sophie!" Others cried, "Evelyn, Evelyn!" The city's soul was splitting right there on the dock, torn between its ghost and its last detective. And then, gunfire, sharp, brutal, cutting through the chants. The mob scattered, shrieking. Figures emerged from the smoke at the dock's edge, armored, armed, helmets glinting under torchlight. Soldiers. At their head, Hayes. His face was hidden beneath a black visor. But Evelyn knew him instantly. The way he walked, the weight in his shoulders. Her heart lurched. "Hayes!" she shouted, desperation in her voice. "Help me!" He raised his rifle, pointed it at her. The world froze. The mob gasped. Sophie smiled. Hayes's voice, distorted by the helmet speaker, cut through the chaos. "You should have burned with him, Carter. You never should have opened that envelope." Betrayal stabbed deeper than Sophie's blade ever had. Evelyn's knees weakened, her oldest ally, her last tether, gone. Sophie laughed, blood running down her cheek, knife still poised. "See?" she whispered. "Truth is fragile. Loyalty is weaker. Everyone leaves you, Evelyn. Everyone but me." For a heartbeat, Evelyn almost collapsed. Ryan was dead. Hayes was lost. Rowan's faith was cracked. Naomi, Cross Briggs, all shadows that had bled into nothing. And Sophie, burning, bleeding, laughing, stood stronger than ever. But then Evelyn heard it, faint, buried beneath the chaos. Ryan's voice. Not words this time, not finish it. Just a breath. A single, steady breath, as if he were still beside her. The last breath. Her chest steadied. Her grip on the chain tightened. Her eyes locked on Sophie. "No," Evelyn rasped. "Not everyone leaves, not him, not ever." And with a scream that shook the docks, she charged. The world exploded, chain against blade, gunfire against riot, Hayes's soldiers clashing with Sophie's mob. Blood sprayed, torches fell, the dock burned. But in the center of it all, Evelyn and Sophie tore into each other like twin storms, neither willing to give the silence its due. The docks became a war zone. Gunfire ripped through the night, the sharp staccato of rifles drowning out the mob's chants. Torches fell, scattering flames across crates and ropes. Shadows lunged against shadows as Sophie's masked followers clashed with Hayes's armored soldiers. Screams echoed over the bay, carried on the wind like hymns to a dying city. And at the center, Evelyn and Sophie fought, chained together by hate and fate. Sophie's knife sliced past Evelyn's ribs, close enough to draw a burning line of blood. Evelyn swung the chain in response, wrapping it around Sophie's wrist, wrenching hard. The blade clattered to the dock. The mob roared. Soldiers fired. Wood splintered. Smoke thickened. But Evelyn and Sophie saw only each other. "You're bleeding out," Sophie hissed, yanking the chain. "So are you," Evelyn spat, driving her knee into Sophie's gut. Both women staggered, breathing ragged, blood soaking their clothes. They were mirrors now, broken, furious, unstoppable. Hayes's voice thundered over the chaos, amplified by his helmet. "Stand down, both of you." Evelyn turned, eyes locking on him. "Why, Hayes? Why betray everything? Why betray him?" For a heartbeat, the rifle in Hayes's hands lowered. The visor tilted as though he were looking not at Evelyn but through her, through time. Back to Ryan, to the days when they had stood shoulder to shoulder. Then his voice hardened. "Because truth doesn't save cities, power does." He raised the rifle again, aimed at her chest. Sophie's smile twisted. "Shoot her, Hayes. Prove it." For one terrible moment, Evelyn thought he would. Then the shot rang out. But it wasn't Evelyn who fell. Hayes's body jerked, crimson blooming across his armor. His rifle slipped from his hands as he collapsed to his knees. Behind him, framed by the smoke and fire, stood Rowan. The old priest's hands shook around the smoking pistol. "I buried too many in silence," Rowan rasped. "Not her. Never her." Hayes fell forward, his visor shattering against the dock. His last breath rattled, empty, a hollow sigh swallowed by the flames. The mob screamed, soldiers faltered, but Evelyn barely heard them. Her eyes locked on Sophie. Sophie snarled, ripping free of the chain. She snatched her knife from the dock, blood streaking her face. "It doesn't matter," she shrieked. "They'll forget him tomorrow. They'll forget you. They'll forget everything but me." She lunged, blade flashing, fury burning. Evelyn caught her wrist, the knife inches from her throat. Their faces pressed close, breath mingling, blood dripping between them. "You're wrong," Evelyn whispered. "They'll remember the silence, and they'll know who broke it." With a scream, Evelyn twisted. The knife plunged not into her, but into Sophie, straight into her chest. The world seemed to stop. Sophie gasped, her eyes wide, blood spilling from her lips. She staggered, clutching the blade buried in her heart. The mob froze, their chants dying in their throats. Soldiers lowered their rifles, the fire crackled, the bay whispered, the whole city held its breath. Sophie's knees buckled. Evelyn caught her, lowering her to the dock. For the first time, Sophie's eyes were not wild. They were human, broken, almost relieved. She smiled faintly, blood staining her teeth. "Forever," she whispered. Her last breath shuddered. And then came silence. The mob scattered. Some tore off their masks, dropping them into the flames. Others fled into the night. Sophie's army dissolved like smoke. Hayes's soldiers, leaderless, retreated into the shadows. The dock fell quiet but for the crackle of burning wood and the distant cry of gulls. Evelyn knelt over Sophie's still body, her hands trembling, her chest heaving. The knife was slick with blood. Her coat was torn, her shoulder burned, her soul felt hollow. But it was over. For the first time in weeks, Ravenport breathed. Rowan approached, his pistol hanging loose in his hand. His face was gray with exhaustion, his eyes sunken with grief. "You did it," he whispered. Evelyn shook her head. No, she did. She chose silence in the end. Rowan's gaze fell to Sophie's body. And Hayes? Evelyn's throat tightened. She looked at Hayes's corpse, his visor shattered, his face finally visible. Once he had been her shield, her ally. Now he was just another mask that had cracked. "He made his choice too," she said softly. She reached for the envelope, Ryan's ledger, the names, the accounts, the proof of rot far deeper than Ravenport. She held it in blood-stained fingers, the pages smudged and crumpled but still legible. "This doesn't end here," she murmured. "It can't." Ryan knew. "He wanted me to see, he wanted me to finish it." Rowan laid a trembling hand on her shoulder. "Then you will." Evelyn looked out at the burning city, the black bay, the horizon still stained red. Her voice was steady, her chest rising with one last unbroken breath. "I will." The dawn broke over Ravenport, pale and merciless. The fire at the dock smoldered, the cathedral lay in ruins, the city was scarred forever. But the phantom was gone. The masks were ashes. The silence had been broken, and Evelyn Carter walked into the light carrying the last breath of her partner, her enemy, and her city. The silence would not come again, not while she lived. And so, the silence finally fell over Ravenport, but in the end, was it victory? Or just another mask waiting to crack? This was the last breath before the silence, a Dark Pulse original crime and suspense story. If you felt the chill of Evelyn's journey, don't let it fade away in silence. Hit that subscribe button now so you never miss the next thriller lurking in the dark. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done in Evelyn's place? Would you have chosen truth or survival? And if the story made your pulse race, leave a like to keep the darkness alive. Because here at Dark Pulse, every crime has a voice, every silence hides a scream, and every story ends with a chill. Until next time, stay awake, stay alert, and never trust the silence.